Good evening, fuckers, and welcome to RL Aftershock, the most candid discussion on everything Rocket League esports. We're into week 3 of lockdown at this stage, and I think we're all slowly going insane. I'm the Eternal J. I'm joined by Digital Bacon. How are you doing on the whatever the fuck you call this? I don't even know anymore. Mate. Like,
Can we
the
restart?
world is falling apart. The world is falling apart. Everyone's losing their minds. I don't know what to say anymore other than that.
Yeah, 25th of March, and we have got a great weekend of Rocket League to break on down, as well as,
Just
trying to look
completely
ahead.
ignore my point about how everyone's losing their minds. Like, we're going to have a great weekend of rock. I mean, it's true. Fairness, right? It is kind of true.
Okay, so the way we've been dealing with this in the past as British people is just suppressing it, Jay. So we continue going forward. Nothing has changed. And I mean, the social distancing aspect is probably no different because you got to keep away from those icky germs.
I mean, look, right, nothing has changed except for the fact that I can't leave the house anymore, and neither can my co-casters, and neither can anybody else. So, I don't know how true that is, Bacon, at this stage. I have no reason. I have no justification. I can't go back out and buy shit anymore because I'm not officially allowed to. Yeah, Amazon is only okay for certain things, right? What if I want to get fucking groceries? Or if I want to get a fucking, a chocolate bar? I'm not allowed to do that because that's not considered essential groceries now, is it?
You just plan ahead of time, Jay. You just go, when you're doing your shopping...
What, I'm supposed to start monitoring police patrols around my area and start trying to figure out when I can go to the shops without getting, nicked? Is that how it's supposed to go?
No, you can still go do your regular shopping. You just
God
got
forbid
to,
I go for a second jog today. Oh, Jesus Christ, Bacon. Law-breaking central right here. Fucking hell.
That's absolutely fine.
It's not. We're not allowed to.
There's no problem with that.
No, there is a problem with that. You can't go for any more than one physical exercise per day. You can't go out for any more than one physical exercise per day in the UK now. That's just officially written. It's now official. Everyone's been memeing the shit out of it, and it's I'm not too fussed about it because I don't go out into the world that much anymore. But either way, we have a show for you, hopefully without needing to leave the house. And of course, it's RL Aftershock episode 68. We'll be talking about big roster moves, in particular Mousesports roster moves. Scrub Killa has left the team before the end of the season. We're also going to be talking about the European Invitational, in particular zoning in on Sandrock, because we love to talk about Sandrock on this show. And of course, our results from the penultimate week of Rival Series and the final week of the RLCS League play leading into our playoffs. Let's start with the news, Bacon. And of course, the big thing is going to be about Scrub Killa leaving Mousesports, as was said on Twitter by the official Mousesports account. We granted Scrub Killa's wish to part ways with our Rocket League team. We will continue our journey in the RLCS with our substitute Arju. We wish Kyle the best for his future career and hope our fans continue their amazing support. This had the greatest reaction in the world on Twitter. Everybody, I mean literally everybody from the scene was questioning whether this was even real or why the hell it even happened. I see Vic saying, please say psych. Stumpy's like, what the fuck, LMAO? Nish is like, what, with the facepalm thing from, was it the Office Space thing, I think is what it's called. Jens has got 3 question marks. Stake's like, what? Cole's got just a single question mark. Duck Moriarty's like, what the fuck? Torment's dad is like, what you talking about, Willis? All these real gifts. RL Stats has got reactions of Turbo. Calix is like, what the fuck? This is 100% fake. I think this came out so far out of left field. So much so that we weren't even prepared for it, Bacon. And we know everything. We were leaked. Yeah. We get leaked news 2 days in advance. And we didn't know about this.
And the reasons behind it are quite frankly fucking stupid, to be honest. So, I mean, it's right out there. You can just go on Reddit and find this, Jay, so I don't mind talking about it. But the biggest problem was with the contract itself. Many different reasons, from Scrub wanting to be self-employed, as a contractor over to Mousesports. Mousesports, by the way, they do their contracts. They're technically class, the players anyway, as employees of the company, to which numerous tax reasons behind that is not ideal for Scrub, but that's the way it is. You're playing on the contract. Separate things as well, and this is the one that annoyed me most. Scrub Killa didn't want Mousesports stuff over, say, his Twitch, over his YouTube, which I can't stress this enough right now. That is why the org is fucking signing you. So it makes no sense at all why I wouldn't do that. You know, you're getting paid a significant amount of money and you're just there sort of trying to have your cake and eat it at the same time. It makes no sense to me. And for Scrub to get kicked away like this right now is actually, I think anyway, good, because the Rocket League scene needs an example like this, because we know the players are all very immature and they're now starting to learn, you know, little things like, oh, this isn't how it works within esports. So him leaving, yes, of his own accord, which is good, like it's all quite mutual in that, but it should be a lesson learned to people down the line that this is just how business is conducted in this atmosphere, in this industry.
Oh, yeah, I will say that some of the stuff that has been quoted, I mean, I didn't actually watch the streams, I didn't see the stuff on Reddit, but I have had people tell me, like, all the reasons why the things that he said while he was on stream. Some of the footnotes, as you say, is that he said Mousesports will find Speed and Cooks It if they play with Scrub in RLCS this week, which I assume is down to the fact that they let him go, and I assume there's no reason why they would, you know, let that happen, because obviously, you know, there's no reason for him to play since he's on a contract, and since he's no longer on a contract, since, excuse me, he's been let go. He claimed the contract was signed under duress. He never wanted to sign in the first place. Why would you then play in the team for an entire season if that was the case? I understand that obviously, you know, there's certain like clauses in contracts that make you feel that way, but like if you could leave at any time, then, you know, why would Mousesports honor this if you really were under duress? You know, like at the end of the day, Scrub Killer had so many options as far as we were aware in the preseason. He decided to go to Mousesports as far as I'm, you know, concerned. And there's no reason to feel under duress, because you know, you've got a great streaming career. You know, I don't see any reason why a pro player would want to continue to play in RLCS unless you had that sort of hunger and fire in your belly for all intents and purposes, you know. He said there was many clauses in the contract that didn't have much freedom, which I don't know what that means. That's very vague. You know, I don't know what the situation is. He also had some problems with like their Razer sponsorship, which like it's so fucking like weird into his reasonings behind this. And it's like, you know, stuff like not having Mousesports stuff on his stream and on his YouTube. Like, guys, this is industry standard practice. You are signed to represent the organization. If you don't want to represent the organization, don't sign the contract. It's simple as that. And it's like, you know, I realize that, you know, there is an incentive there for streamers to be brought or for players to stream, so that way that you can make a little bit of money out of their revenue, out of their like sub and advertising revenue. Like, you realize that you have full control over that, and you don't have to sign shit away. Like, I don't understand what the actual reason is for Scrub Killer's departure. Like, there's so much information out there. A lot of it makes no sense to me, and it just feels like Scrub didn't want to go with the industry standard practice that Mousesports was following, to me. You know, again, this is not like this is anything against the grain. Like, this is not like, you know, method levels of contract. And if you don't know those contracts, those were egregious as shit. Mousesports' contracts, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, they are nowhere near as bad as those things, and yet somehow we're kicking up a stink about this situation, and he's also potentially screwing Speed and Cooks here out of an opportunity to go all the way in the RLCS, you know?
I mean, we'll get on to that later, because it seemed like everything was okay this week for them.
I mean, the specific like details on how the Ardu sub worked is we'll discuss that during the actual during all that stuff. We'll talk about that later. But in terms of just isolating the Scrub Killer move, like, this feels like a very selfish, you know, decision on his part. It's uneducated.
Yeah, like I said, it is not knowing how the industry works. Like I said before, the reason why the org is picking you up is part of being a streamer. That is also why a lot of orgs, like we've seen from contracts, will actually pay more in player salaries if you dedicate to being a streamer for them. Generally, like we'll say with the Vitality case, they were very flexible with that. And Vitality are just absolutely nuts with what they're doing with their contracts. I can't see that being massively sustainable for them. But coming over to Mouse have all these sponsors. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like Vodafone and such, sponsoring them purely because they want not only their name to be on the jerseys of the players to succeed in tournaments, but also when they're streaming, Scrub to his 2,000 concurrent viewers or whatever any given time, to actually see the Vodafone badge come up, be there going, oh, okay, so Vodafone sponsor Mouse, I'm going to go sign with Vodafone. That's just how marketing works. And a big part of why these companies are sponsoring the teams is so that younger audiences, which of course in this day and age are actually, a little bit more of a difficult market because TV's gone away, internet advertising, everyone's using pop-ups, blockers and all of that. So going for teams, orgs, all of that is actually very effective. And hence why Mouse wants Scrub to have all of that, gear plastered on his stream. And again, this isn't just Mouse. This is every goddamn org there is. So for Mouse not to go along with it, it's just so out of blue, so out of left field that it makes literal no sense.
And I think the idea to say that Renault Vitality are not in that camp, I think is a little bit ridiculous, because at the end of the day, they are also backed by Renault. They're backed by Renault Sport. They are backed by a fucking car company. So of course they would be the key sort of sponsors in that respect. But even then, they've got tons of sponsors of their own right. They've got Adidas, they've got Rush, they've got Corsair, they've got all these other sponsors of similar vein towards Mouse Sports.
T-Mobile, yeah,
Orange, in fact. Even those guys, they've got their own mobile carrier sponsorship of their own right. And it's like you're expecting these companies and then these organizations not to put their sponsors all over you. At the end of the day, you are the one that carries the value. At the end of the day, you're the one that's in full control. And it's like, I think the idea that he felt like he wasn't in control for a moment is either very naive thinking on his part, or it was, as you say, very uneducated, and his move away, in my opinion, seems very, very selfish. Not just because of the fact that you're messing with the organization, you're also messing with your teammates, right? Think about what would happen if the Arju thing came in less than 24 hours before their fixtures. Imagine what would happen if all of a sudden they were forced to play in a very awkward team formation, and what could be the worst case scenario for that. Plus not to mention the kind of look that this gives to you, this gives to Scrub Killer as a whole, like the idea of not wanting to have sponsors and being very candid about not wanting sponsors on your stream, that's going to mess with your deals when it comes to any future organizations that you want to try and pick up, because that's not the only thing that comes up. That's not the only thing that teams look at. It's only the only thing that the only thing that they look at is not to do with your skill. It's to do with your way of promoting shit, right? That to me, it feels like it's a fucking really big mistake on his part to make this move, because other teams and other organizations will look at that and they'll fuck with that. They will.
Exactly. And again, for me, the biggest bewilderment is that in any contract as well here, any money you make through those streams as well is not for the orgs to take. So him still streaming, he's still going to get all the subs, all the donations and all of that. So it's not egregious, it's not overstepping the barrier at all, and it just, like we said, is just pretty much standard practice. I guess you could look at this and maybe from an uneducated perspective go look to other sports, let's say football, where a lot of footballers get sponsorships of their shoes, whatever, outside of the team stuff as well. But this isn't how it works within the industry of esports.
That's the thing, it's if you want, you can get your own sponsorship so long as it doesn't mess with the sponsorship of the organization. This is not exactly like it's this isn't exactly like it's a big controversial talking point. Players do this all the time, so long as it's cool with the organization, so long as they don't have to explain to their own sponsors why one of their streamers has a competing sponsor on their stream. Then that's absolutely fine. You can do whatever you want, essentially. As a streamer at the very least. As a player, there'll be certain restrictions in place of you can't play on certain teams, you can't play on competing organizations, what have you. And that's also, again, common industry practice, right, for a top tier organization. I don't understand what was so unfair about these contracts that justifies Scrub Killer's leaving. And he said he was going to make a statement on a Twitlonger and everything, and everyone was expecting drama. I've yet to see that from Scrub. I've yet to see that and see an official sort of statement as to what the issues were and why he's moved away from this. And this is a relatively old story as well. This was announced on
Wednesday, I think.
Yeah, this was announced last Wednesday. Actually, yeah, no, this was about a week ago because I remember I was tilted off the face of the earth after the story broke because it was just before we were set to release Aftershock. So, like, I still don't understand why. I still am waiting on a good reason as to why, you know?
And to me, that just shows that he's realized, not necessarily that he's in the wrong, but the stance he was coming from wasn't correct. And he'll pay the price. The only problem is, Jay, it's fucking Scrub Killer. He'll get picked up by an RLCS team next season, all of that sort of jazz. You know, he's good enough for it. You see, like, you go to Reddit and instantly go, what team, you'll see, like, you know, hypothetical questions like, oh, what team is Scrub going to be on next season? Like, who could gain the most from having him? Like, if TSM stays up, Endpoint stays up, AS Monaco, are they going to try and, like, bolster the team down in the rival series? All of that sort of jazz, you know?
I mean, honestly, I'll be honest, like, you know, hot-ish take. I don't know how hot-ish this could really be, but it's like, you know, I think that an organization would value their sponsors more than they'd value someone like Scrub, to be honest. Like, you know, like, if TSM, like, you know, TSM, the thing about them is that, you know, if they can't see a return for Rocket League, and right now they are not seeing a return on Rocket League, you know, I can guarantee you that much. Like, why would they want to pick up Scrub Killer when he's going to impose all of these sort of, like, you know, things about his about his stream and everything like that? If he's going to impose all these fucking things about it, then why would they want to take him? You know, it's too much investment. You know, for a team that's already failing, and, you know, a potential signing that may or may not, you know, bring them out of the pit of hell that they're currently in. Plus the fact that they're going to lose out on all this opportunity to put their sponsors on his stream. You know, like what reason financially would a team like, or an organization like TSM want to pick up Scrub Killer with all this risk and all this, you know, out in public sort of issues that he's had so far?
So the only thing I'll say to that is, going forward, that I'd imagine Scrub will just have to, you know, accept it and go with the norm. He's not going to be able to go forward like how he wanted to. But in that case of TSM picking him up, TSM might look at it and go, okay, we've got 3 guys at the moment who do fuck all social media wise, no streaming and all of that, really. If they pick up Scrub, then surely that's going to be a benefit when they're paying the exact same wages as, let's just say, Remco's out, they bring Scrub on in, and Scrub also gets, like I said, 2,000 concurrent viewership or whatever. That's given them a little bit more return of interest, purely because that's their marketing aspect, that's them advertising the sponsors
on that stream, like, you know.
That's what I'm saying. Scrub ain't going to get fucking signed by an org if he's going with this mentality. That just ain't happening.
Yeah,
so
I'm sure there'll be a team
and accept it.
I'm sure there will be a team, you know, or organization or not, that would want to pick him up. But I think that he's going to have a hard time fitting in with the RLCS crowd, especially considering they're all under organizations right now.
Exactly.
And this is common industry practice, you know. Like, make no mistake about it. There is no egregious sort of thing here, unless I'm mistaken and there was like a clause in the contract that Scrub Killer's not telling us about, in which case fair play. But until that point, I have every reason to doubt the situation at hand, and I don't see any reason, you know, any good reason as to why Scrub Killer made this move other than just, hey, I want more money. And I feel like that's gonna mess with him going forward, because, like, you know, there are bigger things to think about than just money in this case. I know that he's I know that he said that he's very he's hoping to remake a run back at the championship series. So this isn't exactly him just, like, you know, moving away to become an independent streamer. This will be him. He will be looking back into he will be looking to get back into a championship series squad. So the future, like, it's looking questionable for Scrub, and obviously for Mousesports, they have lost one of the best elements, because, like, I seriously think that if he stayed on that team, they could have been world beaters. We will never get to see that eventuality as it stands. What's up?
Like, that's something we can talk about with RG later. Because that's
we will have a chat about Arju and his performance with Mousesports in the RLCS in this past gone week in the latter part of the show. But for now, that is Mousesports and their troubles and woes with Scrub Killer now departing from the team. Let's move on and talk about some more roster woes. This one is a bit more of a sad little story, because unfortunately, as we all know, coronavirus is the big thing right now. It's shutting down literally everything. As I mentioned, UK has gone into lockdown, so me and Bacon can't even go on our little dates anymore. Unfortunately, it's not a thing, and that's certainly going to be the case for a lot more countries coming up, I imagine. As well as that, it's had a massive impact on the global economical situation especially with the lack of investment that will be seen into a lot of industries, most particularly esports. This video that came out from Chad Larson, the CEO, the founder, president of Reciprocity, whatever you want to call him, he is the guy that is behind the Reciprocity organization, announced that effective immediately, they're going to start removing staff from the organization, making them redundant. This includes all teams. This includes the Rocket League team. And the reason for this is because the economical situation is so uncertain across the world that Reciprocity can't secure crucial funding that they had set in place and ready for the future in 2020. So come end of the season, come off season, the Reciprocity team will be looking for a new home. And that fucking sucks, man, because we looked at this team, we looked at their future, we looked at what they could do with the organization in place, and now that's going to get taken away from them.
Yeah, and that's also a sad one there, because one of the big reasons why the lads moved from PSG to Reciprocity, from what I was told, was a longer term contract to get some more safety for themselves. And yeah, this just has not gone well. And it, like you said, comes down to the current economic climate, but there's a lot of teams at the moment. Like, we know, Jay, within esports, a lot of orgs are always playing on the edge, aren't they? You're always operating necessarily with, I wouldn't say imaginary money, in the sense of, like, with the whole franchising thing, you're buying into a spot purely so that when that spot increases in money down the line, you've technically increased your value as a company. And there's a lot of areas around esports where it's very questionable about the value of organizations, about where the money's coming from, especially when a lot of the money comes from investors. So when those investors step out, what's going to fill the void, you know? And here you're seeing that hit hard on what is not a tier 1 org by all means, definitely into the tier 2s, but that's purely because they were very selective which games they went on into. But it's one that this Reciprocity was really getting a name about itself, and just as they're really booming onto the scene, they've had to just completely drop off, and it's worrying.
Yeah, and like this also is a massive thing that affects all esports that Reciprocity were involved in. You know, I know that they had at least a PUBG team. I'm not really familiar with the Reciprocity organization as a whole. I guess I can just jump onto their website and find out exactly exactly what they had. Although that being said, it's loading very slowly, so I have a feeling they may have had to make that asset redundant as well, or at least had to throttle it a little bit to try and save some bandwidth money.
Rainbow Six.
Yeah, they had a Rainbow Six team as well.
And Gears. No, Halo, sorry.
Yeah, but like this sets a scary precedent for the rest of the organizations involved in Rocket League, because of all the teams and all the organizations and all the teams that these organizations will have, like Rocket League will be one of the first to go, because like, you know, when it comes to trying to save money, you have to cut away the things that are like, you know, hemorrhaging costs and not bringing in very many, you know, very much revenue, you know, and at the end of the day, like, you know, you lose money on a Rocket League team. Like this is such a long-term investment, because teams are getting involved because they can see the potential in Rocket League, and they can see the potential in what it could become, like the rest of us do, like the rest of the fans that look into this situation. And it's like, well, you know, you're seeing the slow progress, you're seeing the risk that is involved in taking an investment like taking in Rocket League, and you have to consider, is it worth continuing that investment in the long term when right now you need short-term cash? And at the moment, teams like Reciprocity, they need short-term cash. And teams like most of the teams in the RLCS, in fact, are also relying on the same investment sort of opportunities and the same investment sort of inflow as teams like Reciprocity, and they therefore need short-term cash. The only exceptions I can think of that is Renault Vitality and FC Barcelona, who both already have big, you know, backing from already established sports organizations and motorsports organizations, and those guys will be fine. But Dignitas as well, because they're owned by the 76ers. But Reciprocity, Mousesports, Veloce, Singularity, Endpoint, especially Endpoint and Singularity as well, by the way, because those guys just got new investment rounds coming in. Same thing with TSM. You know, those guys are all relying on investment rounds, and they should be fine for the moment. But if this thing continues into a long-term pandemic and panic and pandemonium,
like past September,
past September, these guys are all fucked. Straight up fucked.
Jay, let's have a little bit of fun and turn this around, because Reciprocity are actively looking to sell the team on. They're going to be, like you said, looking for a bit of money. So chances of them finding an org are actually somewhat decent, because I'm just going to say you've got a lot of orgs out there that are backed by football clubs and such. Like, let's just have a little bit of fun and say, who would you like to see pick up Reciprocity?
Well, see, it's the thing. It's like, I'm going to be tainted by the idea of the fact that I'm not sure who would be willing to pick up Reciprocity. Like, I'm not sure who wants to get involved in Rocket League right now, because I've heard it's been all quiet on the organization investment front. Not only because of the issues we've raised with the current, landscape and the way things are going with Rocket League. Like, I've heard rumorings about teams like NIP and Team Liquid trying to get involved in the scene, and those organizations, they've already looked at the current landscape and they've been like, actually, no, we don't see this becoming big because of some of the issues that we've talked about on this podcast. We've seen things like this crop up from time to time. And it's like, I'm taking a look at organizations and I'm thinking the only thing I can think of potentially is football clubs or is other sports organizations that want to get involved in Rocket League, because right now their own sport has hit the fucking, has hit the fan, and they're not making any money because they're not allowed to run, because we have to gather, 20, 30 plus people in one public space, which by most accounts and most laws right now it put in place by marshals, is that you can't do that. That's the only teams I can think of right now. And it's like, for the current stigma around esports compared to regular sports, it's still there for most common sports fans. It's like, remember the situation when was it Manchester United wanted to pick up FIFA players, or was it Manchester United or Manchester City? I can't remember which one of those two, but those guys, when they picked up from FIFA players, the outcry from the fan base was absolutely fucking ridiculous of those clubs. Like, it's completely unjustified, I feel, obviously, but it was there. The stigma around esports and video games to a regular sports audience, and as well as that, this also applies to the casual viewer who only watches from ESPN, Sky Sports, what have you, sees these things and goes outcry on Twitter. Like, they still have a massive sort of stigma around it. So those clubs and those organizations, they'll be looking at this thinking, is it even worth it for us to get all this PR backlash when already everyone's trying to get like already getting like a PR hit and a monetary hit from everything that's going on in the world right now? Is it going to be worth it to us? For a lot of those cases, a lot of people are going to look at that, unless they really believe in esports, a lot of people are going to look at that and say no. And even then, that doesn't even discount the idea of them investing into other esports like Counter-Strike and League of Legends and Dota, which are provable to return money. And Rocket League right now is a massive sort of risk investment, like that's the situation we're talking about when it comes to the economical climate and the future of what we could be seeing for Rocket League esports.
The thing is, though, Jay, that I know from talking to a couple of people that because, say, your normal leagues like Premiership, Champions League, all of that have had to shut down, these clubs now are looking to, of course, keep a lot of relevancy, and they're trying to look at this as an opportunity to step into the area. Now, you talk about like going to Counter-Strike, League of Legends, where they're more fighting games, it can be a little bit of a gray area for these clubs to step on into. League is a lot better, but CS is definitely a big no-no because they've got to keep a PG, air about themselves. That's how they run to be family friendly. So Rocket League right now, I could see this happen, and I know there's a couple of football clubs within the UK that are looking at this, considering that they've seen, the element of Barca come on in. They saw PSG, AS Monaco there, but the way they would be approaching this would be the same as, say, your Barcelona or AS Monaco, where it's essentially, or what we just seen massively successful is the 11s. Gareth Bale's team just picked up the South American side and won the South American Rocket League Championship. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, Rocket Streets stuff, but they'd be picking them up in a very similar way where they're just slapping their name onto a company that's just going to organize it for them, and that's how they deal with things. And for me, that is very, very achievable at this current time, where they're just looking to use it more as a PR stunt, and these players would be on 1-year contracts.
The thing about it is that, like, I'm taking a look from it from an infrastructure perspective, because whilst, you know, Counter-Strike is a bit more questionable, Rainbow Six can be a bit more questionable for a lot of organizations. You know, stuff like League and Dota and such, like, they're not quite as based in reality, and therefore they're a little bit more attractive to investors. Like, you know, you think about all the positive PR that League of Legends gets all the fucking time. You know, no one ever talks about how that game is violent. Everyone talks about how Counter-Strike is violent. And in terms of that, you know, there is franchising opportunities in stuff like League of Legends. There is plenty to do outside of the Riot Games infrastructure as well. Plus, not to mention, there are also other projects coming in from Riot as well. Stuff like the Valorant thing that's also set to hit beta later on this summer. Like, that's going to be the next big thing. And if there's a big investment opportunity, if anything, investors looking to get in, like the football clubs, we're waiting for that game to release, because that is set to be, you know, the next big thing in FPS gaming. And it's not even supposed to look that violent. You know, it's also supposed to be, like, you know, in a way comparable to something like Overwatch. In a way not comparable to Overwatch, but comparable to Counter-Strike, but with that Overwatch sort of like cartoonish style. And it's like all these things are you have to take into account when looking at investments, because it's not just a case of football Rocket League. It's also a case of what is there to do in Rocket League. RLCS, okay. What else?
And then to throw on top,
hang on. Let me just finish my point. You've got RLCS, okay. What else? What else is there to do on a top end level? TEI, oh great, fucking, you know, online tournaments galore. Hey, Intel World Open probably will get moved back, and not even then. Like, there's even questions of whether the organization can even be represented in the Intel World Open, based on the fact that we're looking at country-specific qualifiers, and then from there you've got to completely fragment a lot of the rosters involved, because there is not a lot of international-only rosters. We've got Vitality, and that is basically the only notable one, you know, and that's all French. Anything else, you've got to fragment everything. And then from there, what's the point in your investment? There isn't much, you know, because of the rulings that are the IWO. In respect to IWO and what they're trying to do, I don't have much of a problem with that at all. But from an investment basis and from picking up teams, what is the point for any organization and any you know, sports club when they have so many other potentially more reliable and better options to me?
And one that I think is being overlooked at the moment is your more casual games, such as like Teamfight Tactics hasn't even come out, or those auto chess games haven't even come out like with an esports version yet, because they were just so rushed into production, weren't they? So when that comes out, where that's applicable on your phone, which we've seen the mobile game market is very doable in an esports area. It just comes down to more of the marketing strategy towards it all and how that is applied for a football club or whatever, where, you know, their fans at home can pick up this game and then not see it, because like you said, similar to League of Legends, whatever, where it's so disjointed, so completely different from real life sports, then you don't get that same sort of like, oh, why are we watching, you know, say FIFA when we could just be doing real football, you know? And it's an interesting area right now, but like you said, football clubs are the ones that are currently looking during this period, because they have got the safe money, should we put it as, over traditional esports orgs, because they've got that money continuing on, and they're looking to now, during this period of time where they've got, like we said, probably for a good few months, no games going on, no sort of advertising there. They're looking to diversify a little bit. And here, like I said, Reciprocity, if you're a football club looking at it and you've got a team that are a solid, you know, so much history about themselves, going to be secure in Rocket League for the foreseeable future, because they've done that since God knows when, that this is probably the best bet in how Reciprocity need to sell this club on.
Well, yeah, that is assuming anyone's in the market. If anything, I actually want to take a pop at Psyonix at the moment, because, like, if there's a moment right now where you need to bolster the Rocket League scene and get the best return, this is it. Because this is the closest thing you can get to an exciting, you know, sports like esport without being a FIFA or an NFL or whatever. You know, like, you could get so much money indirectly, not even directly from like esports sales and stuff like that. Like, right now, you need to create the biggest. You need to, like, overhaul the infrastructure and do it immediately. You need to do it yesterday, because that is the way that you turn Rocket League esports into the tier 0 esport it needs to be. Like, not even tier 1, not even on the level of Counter-Strike and Dota. I mean beyond that, because everyone is looking. You're right about that. You know, they need to hold their presence, but right now Rocket League is not a good option from my perspective, and I wouldn't advise any, and I don't think many investors will look at it in comparison to other esports. I just don't believe that's the case. I don't believe that is the case whatsoever, and I feel like right now this is the moment where Psyonix, after this season, need to go in and say, look, if IWO is going to get if IWO is going to be fucking, you know, like pushed back or anything like that, postponed, then we need to create like a brand new circuit to fill us into season 10.
Exactly.
Right? That's what we need to see most importantly. And then that's when I'll say, yes, football clubs should get involved in Rocket League. That's when I'll say that regular sports clubs should get involved in Rocket League, because I feel like at that moment, that is the best opportunity for them, because it will be a confident sort of investment for the future. It will be something that ties you over in the short term. It would be perfect for a sports organization to get involved with a sports-like game like Rocket League. But that's going to rest on Psyonix, because right now the infrastructure is not there, in my opinion, and I don't think many people will disagree with that opinion. I mean, maybe you can. Let us know on Twitter at RL Aftershock, during the Discord. Links are in the show notes, video descriptions. You know everything going on about that. And in more coronavirus news, obviously everything's being postponed, all sorts of public events, and it was a matter of time before this happened. The Tokyo Olympics, as according to The Guardian, has been postponed to 2021 due to the coronavirus pandemic. There was a lot of assurance from the Japanese government that they were going to hold it over and they were going to keep it going. But eventually, the Olympic World Committee decided they were going to work with Tokyo to make it happen next year rather than this year. Which, considering the panic and pandemonium that we have about coronavirus, considering that everyone's shutting everything down, that makes sense. And the end result is that while it hasn't really been officiated by Intel or ESL or Psyonix or anyone else that are involved in the Intel World Open, everyone right now is looking at IWO and saying probably this is also going to get postponed as well, Bacon.
Yeah, the only difference here I could say is that it could get postponed till fall, you know, where they're trying to fill the gap, essentially, where the Olympics can go, oh, we've had to delay a year, but this is that hot new thing, esports coming on in, and try and spin it as a little bit of a PR sort of fill for that period. But like you said, if this... There's so much uncertainty at the moment with the pandemic that if this goes longer than people are currently assuming, like, you know, the current sort of talk is we go until June and then see from there what the current climate is, because you don't know, it's changing every single day. Like, you know, yesterday there was that whole thing coming out, oh, the virus isn't evolving as quick as some might think, like not as quick as the flu, so who knows, there could be a vaccine for it or that sort of thing coming out. Well, that's good, but if that doesn't stick by June, then we could be in lockdown, you know, even longer, up until September. If it's up until September, I reckon this is going to get postponed till next year, because Psyonix will come back with RLCS and go, nope, that is our time for RLCS. We might have to postpone it and do it in the winter maybe, or is IWO so locked into the actual Olympics that they'll completely leave it around to next summer because they want to put it in line with that. You know, there's no verbal confirmation about anything at the moment because no one knows anything, and this just makes us look at this, go, okay, we're happy that the Street Fighter guys got their online qualifiers postponed till May, but Rocket League was already, you know, going to be happening in May. What's going on here? And it's just all a clusterfuck at the moment, realistically. And that's for every sort of walk of life. And you just look at this right now, just going, I think with a lot of these teams, this needs to be announced sooner rather than later, purely because as soon as RLCS is over and done with, after, I'm trying to think, is it next weekend? Yeah, this weekend coming with the playoffs, every team is going to sort of, for the rest of the period, go, well, this is the only thing we've got currently planned coming up. We're going to national squads. You know, Vitality is fine, but Mouse is probably going to go, you know, Speed's going to try and find English teammates to play with. Is it English? No, it's British, actually, because we're sticking to the Olympics. Sorry. Yeah. But you get what I mean, where they're going to be looking to that. If that gets delayed by a year, that period of time is absolutely fucking wasted for these guys.
Absolutely, and that's the key thing. Like they've already pushed the Street Fighter qualifiers back to May, so that they're in line with the Rocket League qualifiers. They were going to start, I believe, in March, April time. So they've already made. Yeah, they were set to start already, and obviously Rocket League was set to wait until the end of the season before they kicked up their qualifiers. But the likelihood, considering the fact that Poland is shutting its borders, and obviously the Olympics won't happen in Japan, and the risk, according to every single media outlet, the risk is too high to make these events happen. Like the point seems to be that. Even some players might not even want to travel to the IWO because of the potential risk to their own health. Like all these things are going to compact in, and there's a good chance. I'd say higher than 90% chance that we would see IWO get moved back. And it's like at that point, there is nothing in the calendar. That is the point I was making earlier, is that right now there needs to be a backup plan. And it's one of the downfalls, I think, of the open, closed sort of third party, but not system, one tournament at a time thing that Psyonix have put in place, is the fact that there's nothing left. There's nothing else that we can do. There is no, side league. There is no, third division. There is nothing that, or there is no sort of like online sort of like, system that Psyonix have put in place. I realized that they said they were going to try and do some online stuff, in their last announcement when it came to the, the cancelling of the World Championship. But like, we don't have any details on what that is. Like we needed to know yesterday. And that's the key issue right now with everything. Now that shit's hitting the fan, Psyonix are getting pressured, and they are not coming out with any answers to the questions that the entire scene is asking right now.
And that's where partnering with, say, ESL, like they did for the Intel World Open here, is so crucial, because teams like ESL can whack this shit out in 1-2 weeks really easily, have a plan, because they essentially already have templates for everything, don't they? They've done
not
it
even
before.
Not even templates. Like these guys, the thing about ESL is that they've been in the industry, they've been doing esports for 20 years. Like if you want to know how to run a fucking esport, you go to ESL. Like ESL will know what to do. Like, they've had some weird history in the past and shit like that, but it's like, if you want to fucking, make an esport great, you go to ESL. Like ESL will sort you out with a plan, and a long-term plan.
Well, Rainbow Six is all off the back of ESL.
Exactly. Here's the thing, like, Rainbow Six Pro League, Six Invitational, that's all in ESL. Yes, they'll give a couple of things to DreamHacks and, the Six
Which
Miners.
Again is ESL.
Not even
companies.
Well, yeah. DreamHack is a sister company, but like other things will go to other companies outside of ESL. Is the point I'm trying to make? And but like the main core operation and the calendar and everything surrounding Rainbow Six Esports is ESL. That is why people compare Rocket League. That's why when people compare Rocket League to Rainbow Six, being like similar sort of esport rising, similar sort of timelines in terms of their rising of the esport, everyone looks to Rainbow Six and they compare it and they think, wow, look at what they got over there. It looks so amazing. That's because ESL are running it. ESL know what they're doing. And it's like right now, if anything, is the best time to bolster that partnership if you do nothing else. Like if you do nothing else but, let ESL run things for a few months until season 10, like that could be like a great way, way to give things. Yeah, it's trial period, And it's like, what a trial period as well, when the world has nothing else going on but esports, and you want to try and create some content and you want to try and, bolster Rocket League's esports scene. That is a hell of a trial and a half,
Yeah, you're literally throwing ESL into the fire and see, well, if they walk out of being burnt and singed and all of that sort of shit, we might keep them on. That's a fair play. And ESL right now are looking at that going, well, we're going to get paid to do this. So naturally, in this current climate, yeah, we'll take that on, because a lot of their LAN events have had to shut down, postpone, cancel. So getting online work is naturally going to be taken straight on up, because, a lot of the ESL staff work from home anyway. They do have offices and all of that, don't get me wrong. But within the esports climate anyway, you work quite a lot from home and then go into the office generally for group meetings, for team meetings, that sort of thing, don't you? So right now, ESL are pretty much running 90% as usual, You know, so they could put something on and get it started. They've got teams that can work it. Rocket League is actually a piss easy game to run as an organizer because it's very, very simple. There's not, you know, trying to go in, and it's not like you're trying to teach someone the systems to CS and how to set up servers and that. It's already in place. It's just making sure that the bloody teams report the correct answer, you know, put in their scores and such.
Or you could just give them API access and have the whole system automate itself like it does in Smash. You know,
or just tell them
option.
to run it straight off of Smash. Like, you just go, okay,
too,
ESL, you can do this, but you've got to use Smash because that's our sort of go-to one-stop, which I think is already one of the better options, but understandable if ESL would want to do it on their website servers because that's part of their business. But yeah, going forward, like, it is just such a simple sort of solution. Yes, it is going to cost you money, Psyonix, but wasn't it about last year? You got picked up by Epic fucking Games. You should have the money to be able to pull something off like this. And that's where the security of getting picked up by a big publisher, a big organization like Epic Games comes to play. That is where it has to happen right now.
Yeah, and it's like if there's ever a point to ask for the big boy, you know, dollar bags from fucking Epic Games to help get the esport going, like was the whole point of the acquisition. Now is the time. Now is the time, more than any other time, right? Because otherwise, I genuinely fear that Rocket League esports will die out here. I genuinely, that's the thing about coronavirus and the whole, you know, panic surrounding it, is that it could potentially kill Rocket League esports unless Psyonix get their shit together and get something going for this massive gap that most likely will be left open for the Intel World Open. But again, we're yet to see it get cancelled. A lot of speculation surrounding that. We will bring you the updates of if and when it does get cancelled later on down the road. For now, though, we do have to move on. Give a little bit of good news. Singularity picking up Jake as their coach. I believe Jake has already had obviously this is Jake from the former Chiefs player, obviously 3-time RLCS elite and such. So we've already seen him sort of perform in the Rocket League scene as in the past. And obviously for Singularity, this is going to be a pickup going into the next season of the RLCS. They didn't make it into the playoffs, the European regional. But if I recall correctly, they already had Jake do some coaching in some team. I can't remember. I mean, the memory's escaping me now, Bacon.
So Jake was the coach of TSM previously, and
yes.
Andy the Mandy was the coach of Singularity previously. Andy then, I'm guessing, got cut for this one, and he's now coaching over on Notorious Legion. So that's like the tee up. So they've clearly, Singularity are dedicated to Rocket League, which is fantastic to see. For them to see, okay, a coach isn't working on the side, we'll replace him with a new coach, see how that goes. And, you know, like we said, during this current climate, that is good to see that from Singularity.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the move itself, obviously we saw Jake try and take on the challenge of trying to revive this TSM squad.
No one can save TSM. Come on, face it. Alpha couldn't save TSM, and it was only Alpha on the pitch. Actually, arguably, you could say he saved TSM because TSM are still in the RLCS right now, and realistically, they shouldn't be. I digress.
I was going to ask that point. I was like, hey, do we think TSM was just too bad to be saved by Jake? Or do we think that he might have more problems against coaching the Singularity side? I was going to take the latter opinion there, but based on your reaction there, Bacon, I think you're also on the board of saying, hey, there's potential for Singularity to be coached up by Jake.
Yeah. The Mets and Magnus duo couldn't save TSM, and that's still going on. Jake rightfully probably, he didn't choose to leave because it was down to visa issues and all that, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, so this is Singularity going, okay, we want to bring in the best current coach that is available. Jake's got a track history. Is it going to work? I don't know. He seems like a good coach, but like he's only coached a failed project realistically. So this will be the tale, because you got to think Singularity are safe this season. They're confirmed into next. Now Jake has to take this team and get them top 6, get them to Worlds next time.
Yeah, I think that's the problem, obviously, with Jake being being a coach at the moment. Is the fact that he's got some great playing experience, being part of Alpha Sydney, Chiefs Esports. But yeah, his coaching sort of like experience expands only to TSM, and that's it. That's all we've got for his track record. So it's very unpredictable how well this will go. I mean, in terms of his own experience, obviously he's been playing since 2017, so he's got a good 3 years of Rocket League under his belt. So like I feel like 2016, excuse me, he officially registered from Alpha Sydney. His first outing with an organization was Alpha Sydney. So that's almost 4 years at this stage. So like I feel like he's I feel like he's got what it takes, and he's got the necessary experience and knowledge to try and do something. But I just don't feel I just don't know where it will stand for him as a coach, just because he's got so little experience and so little results essentially with the TSM side. Bacon, that's the key thing for me with Jake and being a coach. I feel like there's potential there, but it's so up in the air right now. I genuinely don't know for certain. I can speculate, and I think we can both speculate, but for Singularity, I feel like I don't know what they need. I don't know if Jake is what they need to make this team work.
And when we look at Singularity, I've been saying it, I could see a lot of teams try and make a play for Nolly. He has had an absolute fantastic season and is such a crucial player for the team. So what happens if Nolly goes out the door? Because they, Singularity always known as an org that do value making money. They're quite smart with how they do that. They invest in their players purely to be able to make money off them down the line. And that could happen there. Or do they, Nolly stays, but the team say, I think we could do better changing out, let's say, Though or Godsmiller, whoever, then Jake's got to then bring them on in. So a coach is going to be very crucial, but I think he's not going to have an easy run of it. I personally don't see this team staying the same by next season, purely because of so many different matters. And I mean, Rocket League is always notorious in the off season for roster swaps. Let's face it.
Yeah.
So I reckon that's going to come in play. So hopefully Jake's ready for that. He's got an easier time of it, of course, than he did with TSM, but that does not mean that this is going to be for a project for him to pick up and just be able, like I said, Singularity, if they are realistically going to be looking for a top 6 result next season, and that is going to be hard to do, I reckon, with how this team is going to have to shape itself in the off season.
Yeah, Jake has not taken on an easy task. There's a lot of breathing room when it comes to Singularity, and they could easily sell someone like Nolly for a lot of money. And considering the fact that, Singularity, they're, obviously they're one of the weaker organizations financially in this, in the RLCS. I feel like, I feel like that might end up being the best thing for them, given the current climate and given the fact that they're going to need some short-term cash just to stay alive. To me, that feels like a very logical sort of a take right there, Bacon. And for Jake especially, that's obviously going to really fuck with what they have on the Singularity camp. So yeah, it's going to be challenges abound, but again, I'm going to keep an open mind. I don't want to discuss this too long because I don't want to get too negative like I will. I mean, this episode is going to be filled with negativity as it stands, and there's even more coming up later on during the show.
Oh, yeah, I don't want to hear about Sandrock.
You will hear about Sandrock. You will fucking hear about Sandrock. But before that, one final piece of news before we end off for the news section. We've gone on for about an hour with this news stuff. There's been a lot of stuff going on in Rocket League.
It's been a lot of good talk. Yeah. That's why. It's not just news, it's talk and what happens off the back of it. But yeah, we got one more thing to talk about here.
And I'm hoping this one gives a little bit more conversation around this, Bacon, because obviously this is the final roster move of the week, if you want to say. And not quite a roster move per se, but this was a tweet out from Gillyweed, obviously the now former head of broadcasting or broadcasting manager, whatever you want to call her, from Psyonix, because she announced on March the 18th that it was her final day at Psyonix. It's incredibly bittersweet because, quote, I have enjoyed my time at the company on the esports team and with the talent working on an esport I believe in and adore. Second, just continuing down a thread just to give you the full statement. Ever since I started casting, it's been my dream to share my passion for the games I love, and despite changing roles, I've been fortunate to continue this dream at Psyonix. They took a chance on me and believed in me when sometimes I didn't, and for that I'm so grateful. I'll share details on my new opportunity soon. It's another chance to share my passions with others, and I can't wait to make them, you and myself proud. Love, heart. In the meantime, RL Players Community and Talent, I'm not going far. I can't wait to enjoy games as a fan again, and you can bet I'll be cheering for you from wherever I am next. So, another one bites the dust, if you will, on the esports team. The ever smaller esports team, it feels like here, Bacon, because now we're down from 6 to 5, because I haven't heard of any other hirings that are going on. And, the rumor at the moment that I have been able to get, I don't know how true this is, but based off the fact that Gillyweed has also been retweeting Valorant stuff lately, this seems like it's semi-commendable and true. Again, nothing's verified until I actually get official evidence. But the current rumor swinging around is that she's going to go join Riot Games to welcome Valorant. That is what I've heard.
And they're currently buying up so many people as esports staff for that because they want to hit the ground running. Yeah.
That is currently the situation that we have at the moment. Now, we actually leaked this prior to the day before, actually. I think it was a day or two prior to this going live. Obviously, we couldn't cover it on the podcast because the dates didn't quite line up because I think we had just recorded the podcast by this point. Hopefully, we can get a bit more of a system going in place to organize that going in the future, SSP2.
No, we had this before the podcast last week, but I remember we were just there, like, since it hadn't come out officially, it weren't our place to talk about it.
I kind of wanted to talk about it, but like the league that we had gave us a little bit more information in terms of some of how this is going to work, because it doesn't seem like Psyonix are going to hire anyone to fill her role based on the fact that Scheist seems to be taking over some of her responsibilities. So I feel like they're just going to make that role and the broadcast side of things more redundant and sort of separate it around the rest of the esports team. And again, any sort of loss that we find to the esports team right now is not a good fucking sign for Rocket League esports, because that team is so small in comparison to the rest of the studio.
Oh, it's anemic.
And yeah, it's tiny. It's fucking like, and any sort of loss that we find to the esports team, in terms of like staff, roles, whatever, it's going to be a massive blow to Rocket League esports. And again, considering what we've already talked about so far in the show, we do not need that. We need more, if anything else.
Yeah, we do. And so going forward, this is... I can understand it as a time, like realistically beforehand, you'd be thinking that, if you're Psyonix, like, okay, we're going into the off season. This is okay. We've got a few months to find someone else. But like we said, with the Intel World Open not happening really now, like, and there needs to be something to fill the space. This is like why we said bring ESL on, because it feels like Psyonix is not ready to handle the next. Well, Christ, you got to think up until September. What's that? April, May, June, July, August, and then September as well.
6 months.
6 months. And it feels like Psyonix themselves have nothing in store for this. So that, and it all comes down to, not having a well-resourced team.
Yeah, and like, again, with everything we've mentioned before, like they need to have good resources. And, again, I can't really blame Gilly for her choice, obviously.
And
again, if the rumors are true,
cracking work.
Yeah, like if the rumors are true and she is going to work for Riot Games, then like fucking that is a promotion and a half. Like that is that is a fucking, like, I understand that Riot Games are loaded. They are owned by Tencent. They aren't like partially funded by Tencent in the same sort of way that like Epic Games are. But like, Riot Games have been, banging it out with esports for the longest little time. And they've got the best sort of thinking when it comes to how a developer that is hands-on should run an esport, because like they have this mentality of, hey, the esport scene and the way that we do things is a separate business to the actual development side, so they have their own independent team, such a thing. And it's like, so yeah, she's gonna get a lot out of going towards Riot Games, and obviously that's more detriment to the Rocket League scene in terms of their own input. And again, I don't blame her for that. I don't fault her for that. I don't think anyone should, because let's be real here. At the end of the day, sometimes we've got to look out for ourselves. And with the current climate, there's going to be a lot of looking out for ourselves at the moment here. So, obviously it's a big blow for Psyonix. I just want to know really what are they going to do to sort of respond to this. Are they going to make more hires? Are they going to make calls in from Epic Games? It's been very, very quiet on their front for the longest time. So I don't know what this means for Rocket League.
Well, considering everything going on at the moment, it's the only option is to call in from Epic. You can't if you're going to make interviews and all of that happen, from outside, try and bring in new talent and that, well, it's fucking hard to get people set on up in a work environment when they're not in an office, when you can't give hands-on instruction, like how things are working. So it's got to be someone that somewhat already knows the way of how things work. So yeah, if it's going to happen, if anyone new is going to come on in, it probably is coming from Epic, where Epic are going, okay, this is one of our, sub companies. This is property we own. We've got to make sure that this stays on course, this stays on track.
Yeah, and right now things are certainly getting derailed. I don't want to hamper on it too much because obviously it is what it is. There's not much that we can really do about it, and there's still very little information from the Psyonix side of things. Most of the information I have is about Gilly's future, so, and that's not really my place to make comments. So, again, I think on behalf of the Rocket League scene, best of luck to Gilly Weed.
All the best.
Yeah, I hope you're doing well. And again, if it is true what you're doing, then fucking big congratulations. There's nothing else that can even compare to that sort of thing. Anyway. That's our news for this week. The longest news segment I think we've ever had on the fucking show. So, credit to us, Bacon, for having some constructive conversation about Rocket League esports. But now we're going to talk about some results, because there have been a lot that went down since the last episode. And we'll start with the European Invitational. Now, I realise that in about 5 hours from us recording this on the 25th of March at 2 p.m. GMT, there are a few results that will not be reported by the time this podcast comes out. Those, of course, being the, I think, UB Finals, the LB Round 3, and I believe the Losers Finals is not going to be taking place. I think it's just 2 best-of-7s for that matchup. But I will go through the playoff results that we have had. If you're wondering why those results are missing, then that is the reason why. So, last time we left off, we had just finished the group stage, and now we have the quarterfinals and semifinals played out all the way up to, again, losers round 3 and winners finals. And the results are as follows. In the quarterfinals in the upper bracket, Singularity beat Notorious Legion, then went on to beat Endpoint in that upper semi-final. Triple Trouble were the ones that lost to Endpoint in the quarters. And in the other side of that upper bracket, Sandrock Gaming beat Dignitas, RCD beat Veloce, and both those teams met with Sandrock taking a 4-1 above RCD to take on Singularity in those winner finals. In the losers finals, we lost Notorious Legion to Triple Trouble, we lost Veloce to Dignitas, and then the following round, RCD smashed Triple Trouble 4-0, and Endpoint just barely scraped out against Dignitas 4-3, and those two teams will be taking each other on in losers round 3. So that means your top 4 are Singularity, Sandrock, RCD, and Endpoint in no particular order. Right. Let's start with the big thing this week. Right. So last week, I talked about how I wasn't certain about Sandrock Gaming. And everybody jumped down my throat about this team. Everybody did. I mean, in terms of public comments. I mean, in terms of private DMs. So I want to start with you, Bacon, on this one before I get into my little bit about this team. Tell me what you think about Sandrock Gaming.
So, yeah, I know you're going to be very vocal on this. Sandrock Gaming, everyone's hyping them up as the next best, like they should be an RLCS team. Now, let's just take into account as well the number of RLRS teams that have taken down RLCS teams here this weekend. And the one I want to take to look out at is the Sandrock versus Dignitas game. Dignitas arguably so close to being the best in the world at the moment, probably about second behind Vitality. But the way they played in that series, don't get me wrong, Sandrock Gaming did everything right by their accounts. They were closing down, they were adjusting to Dignitas. The problem was Dignitas, every time they got adjusted on, every time that Sandrock had closed down one avenue of their playstyle, Dignitas didn't open up another one.
Oh, so, thank you! Thank Thank you. Someone's talking fucking sense. Oh
Yes.
my God. Oh my God. Oh, Bacon, you have no idea how much I've wanted to hear that from someone that's not my own fucking voice for the past week. Oh my God. Like, the idea that this result means that Sandrock are an RLCS team is fucking ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm so fucking glad you said that. I genuinely am, because I was prepared for so many people to fucking, like, you know, back me up. I honestly thought I was alone in this corner. But Dignitas were not playing like fucking Dignitas in this series whatsoever. Absolutely not.
No. And
Like,
just off the back of that, I'm going to say, you said Sandrock are an RLCS team. Now, I would argue they're on a borderline level, but so are RCD Espanyol. So are, even Notorious Legion on their day here. It does not mean that they're RLCS. It's just they're playing well, and every credit to them. This Sandrock Gaming side have been doing the work. You take the series against RCD Espanyol, and that was a much better fucking series to watch.
Yeah,
where
no,
RCD
absolutely.
Espanyol had to fight, and it was super close. Don't get me wrong, only a 4-1 end game, but it shows that Sandrock Gaming have got everything in order, and they're actually quite a smart team to be able to close everything out. They've done their homework, which is fantastic. It just shows throughout this whole tournament that, Jay, what you said last week about how it did feel like a lot of the RLCS teams weren't taking this seriously. The only ones that seem to have taken it seriously out of the RLCS teams has been Singularity.
Thank you, Bacon, because the amount of dick riding I have seen about this team in the last week have sent me off the fucking cliff. It is actually ridiculous, the shit I've seen on Reddit, on Twitter, on Discord. It is absolutely fucking absurd. There was a Reddit post that made the front page about the VOD of that particular series, saying this is one of the best series I've ever watched.
Oh, Christ.
You are fucking kidding me, right? You can't be serious. NRG Dignitas, G2 Vitality, Dig Vitality, fucking G2 NRG, NRG Chiefs, F3 Resonant, F3 Count Crown and Jewels, all these series that are so much better quality and are all of much more historical significance to Rocket League, and your fucking nomination for the best series of all time is Sandrock Dignitas in the TEI. Fuck out of here. Fuck out of here with that absolute bullshit. And the number of people that were like, yeah, they're awesome, they're like Cloud9 sees G2, they're fucking amazing. And the only people that stepped up to the plate to say, actually, we should probably reel it in a little bit, got fucking buried, absolutely buried on the comments of that thread. And I know I'm going to get hate for this, but fuck you, I don't care. If you genuinely believe that, go watch some more Rocket League and go take an objective look at that Dignitas series. How many times did Yukio lose control of the ball? How many times did Astral miss point-blank shots in the middle of the fucking net? How many times did the defensive completely half-heart their way through that series? That is what it feels like for Dignitas right now. And the level of shit that has been flung to people that dare say maybe we should take a bit more of a moment to say, hey, maybe all these results might not be 100%, and getting fucking railed for it? Nah, that is not on. From the same community that considers themselves fucking bastions of hope, kicking out people like Keemstar and Mocket, and you're gonna let these guys run rampant for a fucking month? You won't be talking about Sandrock Gaming in a fucking month. Not to mention all the things I said about conflict of interest and all that shit from last week, they have not been addressed. Not been addressed whatsoever. Absolutely not. And that, if anything else, is another asterisk towards Sandrock Gaming's performances in this tournament. Because take a look at their previous results. What have they done outside of the TEI? They've had the Skirmish Invitational, which was that European second event, that Dazzling run. That was a good result. Fair play. The next Skirmish Invitational they ran, last place, 9th to 12th. They lost to, who was it? Fucking Galaxy Bang. They lost to Galaxy Bang. The next tournament they appeared in after that was a Nice Cactus Weekly, where they lost to Wind and Rain UK, right? How the fuck are these guys world beaters? How in the hell are they worthy of all the praise that the entire community, it feels like, is going to give these guys? And I'm sorry, I'm genuinely stunned at the level of dick riding that we've seen so far. What is it about this team that is so special that they deserve this level of praise against teams who are paying substandard for a tournament that in the end means sweet FA? What is the TEI to an RLCS team? The fucking last place prize money award for RLCS is higher than this entire tournament's prize pool. And yet, the level of shit that people are receiving when they dare challenge this team's position in the scene is absolutely absurd. I'm sorry, but that's my feelings on this.
Jay,
absolutely
it just
stupid.
all comes down to one silly little thing of just Johnny Boy fanboys. That is what it is. It's fanboys coming on in. Now, on the opposite end, have Sandrock had to earn their way on through to the winners finals? Of course they fucking have. This team has been playing well, yes. They've beaten every single opponent. They've had to earn their way through to the winners finals. And we're not discrediting them at all. It's just more about you've got to take each game as it is and objectively look at it, like especially us as analysts and that. And yeah, you go, Dig played absolutely terrible. If Dig were to play like that against, I don't know, Endpoint or...
Which they did, by the way.
And they lost. Well, Endpoint, are you riding their dicks throughout all of this? You know, it's that mentality. That's the way you got to look at it, and hence why it is just fanboys. And I know it rolls you up a little bit there, Jay, but it just comes down to us wanting people, to wanting to get a little bit more educated and then throwing out general statements, building them on up. Yeah, it's a little bit ridiculous. Now, if they go and win this, fair play, but we still need a series that can rival, you know, anything we've seen before, because quite frankly, all the Sandrock Gaming games series so far have been pretty meh. Like I said, the RCD Espanol was the best one so far, and even then that was okay. That was like a 6-7 out of 10. You know, it's not... I'm going to put one of my favorite series so far has been Dig Vitality at Last Worlds, and that I would say is the best series of all time. This is nowhere near close enough yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that comment in particular is what triggered me so much, because you can like fanboy over them as much as you want. I'm not gonna judge you if you want to be a fan of Sandrock Gaming. Absolutely, go ahead and be there. But if you're gonna start attacking people and trying your best to bury opinions about this team just because you don't like them, that's pretty shitty, you know. And furthermore, I'm just gonna say right now is that if you're going to ride Sandrock's dick, I hope they're packing as many inches as they're packing dollar signs, right? That's all I'm saying, you know, because right now, I'm not as impressed as you guys are. At best, I think they're playing at a high RLRS level. I think that series against RCD is a better representation of what this team can do compared to that Dignitas series, because Dignitas didn't give a fuck. They didn't give a flying fuck. Most of the RLCS teams in this tournament didn't give a flying fuck, because why should they? There's no prestige in winning the TEI. This isn't a dream hack. This isn't an RLCS World Championship. No, it's a tournament which is held online by a streamer, which, by the way, has less prize money in total than last place in RLCS. Like, come on, guys. Like, don't give me that crap. Don't give me that bullshit. And I know people are going to raise their opinions and say, "Oh, you don't want Middle East to succeed." I do want Middle East to succeed. I really do. But here's the problem: if we have to have so many sort of asterisks next to their results of people not caring about this tournament and about the results that they post in this tournament, and if we have to have a situation where the sponsor and founder of the tournament is the owner of the team, and that team so happens to be doing well, the possibility of something shady going on here is enough for me to write this whole tournament off. Those are the things that have not been addressed, and nobody has talked about it at all. The only thing that's been in the headlines, Sandrock are the best team in the world. Fuck out of here. Fuck out of here.
So the chance of foul play for me isn't like as big a thing to think about. It comes down to now, like, well, if we've got a team like Sandrock Gaming coming from, we've seen these Asian teams, where is their possible path to pro? Because Sandrock Gaming might be, you know, the bee's knees at the moment. They might even be like, you know, able to contend at the lower end of RLCS, But what is it all for, Jay? Considering
Exactly.
that they
Exactly.
don't have a way to, like a path to pro. They have no chance at the moment. Don't get me wrong, Samrock Gaming could possibly, I mean, if at the Intel World Open come through and absolutely smash. And I can't wait to see that because, again, for me, Samrock Gaming, I want to use as the beacon to why RLCS needs to upgrade, why it needs to change. You know, when you've got, and this is going to be the one that I thought was going to be the funniest and the most eye-opening thing was when we come round to Intel World Open, that the Chinese, like China has it's a free spot through, and no one really knows much about those teams. The current like Chinese team that is absolutely kicking ass is actually more Chinese residents. You know, they're not actual like born in China kids, and this is going to be an interesting one to go forward with. But Samrock Gaming are legit for the it is Saudi Arabia, ain't it? Yeah. The Saudi Arabian region, and I'm excited to see them be able to play at that level. But that's all they're going to get. If you've got someone like Incivic coming on through, I'm just going to straight up say it now. Why is that dude just blasting money? Because that makes no sense to me. You know,
and that's the thing. Like, these are questions that no one is asking. What is Incivic's damage? What is his motivation? He has not addressed these, as far as my knowledge.
No, I'm hoping it is just purely that he's trying to bolster this team up to make that play. It's good intentions to say we need Asia, we need the Middle East in RLCS, and this is the play that he's going for. Because hands up, that's baller.
Well, that's the thing. Is like, in my opinion, he's not doing a very good job if that's his aim, right? Because having a team do this well against such a high bar of teams with such really weird results, like all it does with experienced people like myself who have been around the esports infrastructure, especially those of us who have come from Counter-Strike, because all you need to do is do some basic Googling and find out. Yeah, the red flags are all up and down the fucking shot. Like, go look up ES Force and what they tried to do circa 2016, 2017. Go look up Refresh Entertainment and what they tried to do circa 2016 and 2017. Go look up the PEA and their historic demise, and WISA and their historic sort of like fade into irrelevancy, right? From what Counter-Strike tried to do and what the fucking like scumbags tried to do in Counter-Strike as a whole. And I'm not saying that Incivic is a scumbag. I'm not saying that Samrock is a scumbag, but I'm saying that these are the signs that I am reading based off of my experience, having been here for 5 years in Counter-Strike, bringing my experience, bringing my knowledge, bringing my, you know, what the research that I have done, because I'm invested in that game as much as I am into Rocket League, and seeing everything that's gone down in terms of those shady practices now getting translated over to this tournament. No one's saying a word. No one's saying a word, and that scares me, because there's one thing that will ruin Rocket League esports bigger than anything else. It's stuff like this. And again, we have seen this before. Mock it. Lucky. They tried to do the same thing when the community was small and when the best thing going around was Winkley's. Now we've upgraded $20,000 double elimination brackets, and this is the exact same thing. If you swap those names about, there would be blue bloody murder. The community would not be nearly as hyped about this as they are right now. But because it's Incivic, because he's given so much already in terms of a monetary value over a short period of time, I feel like people were giving him a pass. I am not financially motivated, Bacon. I am not willing to give this a pass. And until these issues are addressed, this tournament will not be going down as one of my historic ones. Furthermore, I'm not talking about Samrock Gaming anymore, even if they win the damn tournament, because until these problems are addressed, these results for me are illegitimate, straight up. And a final thing, just to address the community, by the way, if you are so big Sandrock fans, I really hope to see you in the Europa Rising Stars tournament this Tuesday, because I ain't seen none of you coming out to support those guys lately at all. Considering the amount of people that have come up and said, oh, Sandrock are the next best thing, why aren't you supporting their run through the lower levels? Why aren't you there for them? Because you're chasing fads. That's the bottom line of it. Let's move on. Yeah. Let's move on.
Well, yeah, you take that just quite simply where Sandrock lost the quality control. Like, that shows me, again, why it's a little bit of fad. People just hype off it because it's on Johnny Boy's stream and all of that. But Samrock Gaming losing to what are looking like a decent team, Archie Hibbs and Hakeem. But are they like
they're not RLCS level. That's the problem.
They're not RLCS level. Are they RLRS level? Maybe with time, but right now, no. So you're just like looking at a very small, isolated view of one team. And again, that just is down to, quite honestly, the climate of Rocket League.
We'll do some more research is the bottom line of what I'm trying to say. That's my Sandrock Gaming thing done and dusted. They will not be referenced on this show till they get some legit results. Let's move on and talk about Singularity. As you say,
I want to talk about them if they win next week at least, because
well, you can do that. I'm not going to say anything. I've said my piece. Again, here's the thing.
It will be a good series here tonight.
Here's the thing, right? I cannot, because of the issues I mentioned with the conflict of interest, I can't bring myself to legitimize these results just because of my personal experience and what I've seen happen to tournaments like this, right? That's my reasoning why I'm not talking about this team anymore. Not until we see them do something in IWO, in Rival Series, in, you know, whatever LAN event that crops up in the next year or so. I can't. I'm not doing it. You know, I refuse. I straight up refuse.
Into proving guilty. Jay, I'm just going on the opposite end of it, and I think there's nothing yet to show that is there. So I say play on. But I do want people, like you said, to be looking into this to see why.
Well, let's move on. Let's play on, as you will, and talk about Singularity, as you say. Probably one of the only teams in the tournament that actually have given a damn, because they have had some pretty good runs so far. I mean, Singularity, obviously, they didn't quite top their group. They did lose to Sandrock Gaming in one of the more legitimate series of that particular game, where Sandrock took a mini reverse sweep. But other than that, they've been pretty good so far. They beat Notorious Legion 3-1. They beat Endpoint 4-1, which I personally didn't see coming, but considering the fact that they've already beaten them twice now, 2 out of 3 times so far, I think it is for Singularity. I feel like their results so far have been pretty consistent with the way that they've been running. And again, the way this team has been playing, it feels like they really want to win this because they have something to prove. You know, going forward, they need to raise their stock. They need to raise their position in the RLCS. And obviously, with that second season in play, like, they're currently on track to make a decent run, Bacon.
They are indeed. And when you look at Singularity here, they have gone up against Sandrock before, back during the group stages. It was in the last week, so 2 weeks back. And that was a very, I'm going to say, odd series, because once again, we've seen from Singularity quite often in the past that they always have one player that isn't really performing, and that was the case there on that day. And Sandrock Gaming were rightfully able to get the win. But here, with current runs for Singularity, it's going to be interesting, because if the entirety of Singularity show up, they will take Sandrock Gaming. It just comes down to Sandrock having to close down and really damage this side, because quite often I think their main play is going to just basically be to get Godsmiller tilted off the face of the earth once again and make him do all those, you know, pre-jumps like he does and flare about. And yeah, if Sandrock can do that, Sandrock have got the win. But otherwise, Singularity, this is going to be, for me, probably the best show of strength for them, because they're going up against a team that have been doing their research. And if Singularity can get the win, that for me will prove a lot better future for this team. Because like I said before, you know, with the Jake pickup as the coach mentioned, Singularity are a team now that, yes, they've got the security, they're in next season, but this is where the real work now has to come on in. They can't just, like, you know, think that they're safe in RLCS. That's good. This is just an off-season tournament. Realistically, you know, it's the TEI. No, this is where you got to put that grind in, getting yourselves ready so that you can be a top 6. Even probably they're going to, I would like to see this team push for a LAN-able team, you know, trying to make it through the regionals next season. And going up against teams that you might underestimate a little bit is also a big player of that. Because how many games did we see at last LAN where some of the bigger teams, Reciprocity, really underestimate their opponents and fall because of it? This is a big showing for Singularity here.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and again, this is a tournament that matters to a team like this. You know, like, even though they are RLCS, the bottom line still is the fact that they are trying to prove something, and they are new risers. I think that they are taking this one seriously around the likes of the rest of the rival series squads. And yeah, you know, I feel like this was the right sort of team out of all the 4 teams that we had in that quarterfinal sort of branch. I feel like Singularity probably were the best sort of squad. I would have liked to see Triple Trouble if they had kept their form from the rival series that they recently had. You know, like, I feel like that if we had seen that team that coming forward, then I would like to see that sort of like win things out. But honestly, considering how they went out in that lower bracket, I'm not really all that fond of their performance so far in this bracket here, Bacon. I guess actually we can move on and talk about that actually now, just to transition over to the next point of obviously the teams that got eliminated. Notorious Legion, Veloce, Triple Trouble, Dignitas, all 4 of our first eliminated teams from the back to the front of that particular pack. I want to start with Notorious Legion on this one because they held up a pretty good fight so far in this bracket. They even went to Game 7 against Triple Trouble. But sadly, I feel like they fell off a little bit. They had a close little matchup. And, compared to their performance in Rival Series, this was not exactly what I would call on par.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't. They have had a fantastic few weeks, and now you look at it and they have dropped off a tiny little bit. Akin to that, we can talk about the RORS a tiny little bit, and saying their loss there shows it as well, spoilers for the future and all of that. But Notorious Legion had a very, very fucking riding high moment for about 2 weeks there, and just this last week gone, they dipped. And this meet is probably going to be the best of the team purely because they've got to learn to run with that sort of low period. But it does show that Notorious Legion have a lot of inconsistency, and largely throughout a lot of the last week, for me, it felt like Cash wasn't popping off. In the past, we've seen him really, really be such a massive goal scorer. But this week, he wasn't able to do that. And unlike, say, your Reciprocity, where when Chaucer isn't able to pop off, they push Fruity forward. This team doesn't have that factor just yet, so it's still a team that's learning. But we have to say, for what they are, they played really well, and it shows that 3-4 loss to Triple Trouble did feel like a Rival Series game.
Yeah,
but they've done well throughout this tournament, and it really again proves the point that the Championship Series teams really didn't show up for this tournament, and that the RLRS teams were putting everything in it to, even on a day when they're not playing bad, still look decent.
Yeah, I have to say that was one of the more entertaining series of the lower bracket.
Yeah.
It's a shame that Triple Trouble kind of fell to pieces in their next series, though. I mean, it is against RCD Espanyol, so I don't want to take too much away from them. Yeah, it was always going to happen. I just didn't expect them to go 4-0 down. I feel like they kind of lost a little bit of control.
4-1 was my prediction for that.
Yeah, 4-1 was my prediction. I just didn't think it would be as stomping as it was, because even some of the individual game score lines was sort of fucking 3-0s, 5-3s, 4-1s. They weren't pretty sort of matches for Triple Trouble. They had a tough little time. And I think that obviously that team have to develop themselves a little bit more. They showed quite a lot in terms of what they did in the Rival Series B stream in the last couple of weeks, in the way that they managed to get their team play together. How am I trying to say this? I just think they need to work on their consistency, I think is what I'm trying to say, And if they can sort of just develop themselves in that respect, I could see this team potentially challenging RCD going into next season, or teams of that caliber going into next season,
Well, like we said, with Triple Trouble, their problem was coming into the season, they were just going straight off the merit of them as players. They didn't take anything seriously, so they got smacked super hard. Going on through, they've had to reform themselves, had to near enough work on a lot of team chemistry, and using tournaments where they've taken this Invitational super seriously, and they have improved so much over the last few weeks, haven't they? And for me, Triple Trouble have done a fantastic job. The problem was that Endpoint have also done that, hence why they got slapped back in the upper quarterfinals. Dropping on down, Triple Trouble had Notorious Legion, who they felt a lot more comfortable with, but going up against RCD Espanyol, it shows all the cracks purely because RCD Espanyol are such an aggressive team.
Yeah.
So fast, furious, that it means that you have to be, when you're a slower team as well with Triple Trouble, you have to be such a close-knit unit. And Triple Trouble aren't that yet.
Yeah, no, and it's again, for just to go to transition over to the RCD part of things, I can see them being a potential underdog. I could see a potential upset result against Endpoint, which might be a bit of a preview to the...
I reckon RCD Espanyol will beat Endpoint.
You really think so? I mean, damn, that's fair play to you. I mean, I was going to talk a little bit more about the teams that got eliminated, but honestly, considering it's Dignitas and Veloce, the teams that remain, I don't think I want to say any more about that, so whatever.
There's no point. They didn't bother.
Yeah. Let's get our predictions in on the winners, finals, and losers round 3. Where do we think these series are going to go here?
I think Singularity beats Sandrock, RCD beat Endpoint, then Sandrock beats RCD, and Singularity come out on top of everything.
I think that. Yeah, I'm kind of going to roughly agree with that. I think, however, the RCD endpoint one will go down to 7 games. I think that possibly could tip to the favor of endpoint. I think that's a really close matchup. I don't think it is as cut and dry as you want to make it out to be. So
I put that that one.
I'm going to go 4-3 on that one, but I am going to go RCD and roughly play out the same sort of bracket as what you put down. So we'll find out whether we're right or wrong on the next episode of RL Aftershock. For now, though, we're going to move on and talk about the Rocket League Rival Series, as has been crucified for as terms of that particular name value. Do you know that I've actually been told I shouldn't be calling it RLRS? Apparently it's supposed to be branded Rival Series, but when you call it RLRS for 2 seasons straight and introduce it as RLRS for 2 seasons, it's kind of difficult to break the habit, Bacon.
And the mainstream is also calling it RORS, when they're doing the RLCS stuff and they're calling it RORS. Yeah, there's no consistency across the board there.
We're going to talk in a bit more detail about that a little bit later on, but for now, let's go into our results for Rival Series. Triple Trouble beat Baguette Squad 3-1. BDS beat RCD 3-0. Yeah.
Okay.
We Dem Girls beat Vertex at 3-1, and RJM just missed out beating Solari at 3-2 on their particular board. And on the B stream, we had RCD go toe-to-toe against Servette Geneva, going 3-2 up against those guys. It's not been an RCD week, has it? BDS going 3-0 up above Vertex. Solari beating out We Dem Girls 3-1, and Triple Trouble shaking things up with a 3-1 victory above Notorious Legion, leaving your standings going into the final week with BDS and RCD Espanol in the race for first, 7-1 up. BDS having a +16 game difference and RCD having a +6. Third through fifth, however, they are all confirmed for their positions. Solari will most definitely be making it into the top 3 at the very least. They cannot make it into top 1 at this stage. Triple Trouble and Notorious Legion will be up 4th and 5th positions. They are guaranteed to stay in the Rival Series for another season at 5-3 and at 4-4 respectively. On the border, though, this is where things get real spicy. RGM and We Dem Girls are up to trade places here, especially as they have a series going into next final week, which will decide who will be the team that finally stays in and who will be relegated back to the pit of play-ins. But Vertex, Servette Geneva, and Baguette Squad, their fortunes have run up, unfortunately. They're all doomed. They're all fucked. So let's start by talking about that RCD series. I want to go ahead and bring that to the fold. Against BDS, they really lost the ball. They really lost the fucking plot on that series.
Yeah, that was just one where they couldn't get started realistically. Game 2 looked a little bit better, but I mean, that for me, RCD just did not sharpen that day. And BDS looked okay as such. It was not a fantastic series to watch, but it just showed that BDS were ready, and that's the least you can ask for, of a, in quotations, pro team, because it is second division, yeah, sure, but it carried on through to the B stream the next day. When they went up against Servette Geneva, RCD just meh. They played, sure, they got the win, but was it a performance they could be proud of?
No,
that's the question.
Not. I don't think that they could be proud of that performance at all, to be honest. I think that they really fucked up. I think that they really dropped the ball in this one because Servette Geneva were doing things that were pretty standard for Servette Geneva, and I could see all the common mistakes coming out from Servette, but against RCD, it felt like they left a lot of open holes in their defense and their offense for counterattacks to come through. And fortunately, they did turn it around by game 5. But there was a point where we were sitting in that rival Discord, and we're just sitting there oh my god, they're going to get a reverse sweep. They are actually going to reverse sweep RCD. Is the fucking sky falling or something? Are we actually in this world right now? But RCD, if they lost that to Servette Geneva, they would have lost their position to gain first place as well. So they got a lucky escape on that respect. But losing to BDS especially, that's catapulted their game difference and their position right now. All the tiebreakers go the way of BDS right now. RCD not only need to beat Baguette Squad, they need to hope the Triple Trouble mess things up for BDS. Right now, that is all that rests in their top 1 placing because, again, BDS, plus 16 on the game difference. It is the highest of any team by a country mile in the league right now. And that's compared to RCD's plus 6. Even if they were able to close that gap behind, but somehow, which they can't at this stage, both teams have one series left. They even got the tiebreaker with the fact that BDS won the series above RCD. Like, this was the worst week to have a dip in form, like for that RCD squad. And the team that have dominated for the entire course of the season may lose at the very last hurdle and screw their chance for a promotion.
Yeah, and again, because where it comes off the head-to-head before goal difference, don't it? Because RCD lost that game to BDS, they're doomed now, of course, to maybe be second, because we come up into this coming week, Jay, with RCD versus Baguette Squad and BDS versus Triple Trouble. That should be wins for both sides. So RCD Espanol have literally thrown away top spot.
Yeah, and again, this is the worst timing in the world because like now this race for first place is completely open for both these two teams, you know. But there are some results that we can take solace in and saying, hey, actually, you know, this could actually be a fun little time for BDS, especially because again, so long as they win against Triple Trouble, they'll be promoted. Like, that's it. Yeah. The only issue they can have is if Triple Trouble take the loss and if RCD take the win against Baguette Squad, which in fairness, they probably should take the win against Baguette Squad. I don't see any reason why they would lose to the only team that has not taken a single game so far this season. Although if they do, then RCD are basically as good as fuck. Like the short and thick of it. They will actually drop to third place and lose their seeding position as well in promotions.
The reason, like, don't get me wrong, RCD Espanol are top dogs. Normally, in this case, I would be backing the underdogs purely because, hey, to get rid of that, 0-9 status. But purely because Baguette Squad would then become 9th and Civet Geneva would drop on down. Yeah, can we not?
Well, yeah, it's a weird moment for RCD, and it, again, could throw things off. We're going to talk about their match next week against Baguette Squad in a bit more detail in a moment's time. But now, though, I do want to focus on the other race because Triple Trouble did secure a shock victory, I guess you can say. I think going into this series, Bacon, we casted it. I think we were leaning on the favor of Notorious Legion, if I recall correctly. Like, correct me if I'm wrong in that respect. But Triple Trouble did take a very confident series, and this is the first time we said, okay, this team have found the spark. They found the magic that they've needed for the entire season, and they look pretty good. They look really good with their link ups and their passing plays. I could see the opportunity for an upset. It won't be easy. That much is certain in my respect to going into next week. But with this victory of Notorious Legion, they have secured themselves, and what became a race between Triple Trouble and Weedem Girls to stay in promotions has now become a race between Weedem Girls and RJM. That is the thing I want to focus on the most here, Bacon, because they've got a match next week. Both of them have one match, and it's against each other. They couldn't have been more perfect. That one decides who stays in the rival series for another season. Thoughts, Bacon? What do we look about this?
So, with the two games, I just want to bring them up as, like, before I make the prediction for next season. RGM have actually been turning it up a little bit over the past few weeks. I know they've got 2 losses in the last 2 weeks, with a loss to Solari, but it's Solari, and they did go to game 5, and then previously BDS. It's BDS. RGM taking down Triple Trouble. Okay. Because you can see some of the similarities, we'll say, between Triple Trouble and Weedem Girls. And there, when you look at Solari taking down Weedem Girls did not look good throughout that series. It's a case of, and sorry to say it, Breezy was just throwing himself around the pitch. He didn't really think about much during that series, and it was, for me personally, the poorest performance Breezy has had throughout this entire season. Normally him and Ixo are linking up so well, and they're having to deal with, Greasy throwing himself around the pitch. And they're lucky they got that one game. And again, that really did come down to Greasy throughout that series. He has really proved himself this season, but not the way I was expecting it beforehand. Me going back saying, I want Greasy to be a defending role. The other two can just hold the attack themselves and, work around the midfield quite a lot. But no, Greasy has put Stamp down as being a formidable upfront player. And it just then comes down to the other two are not looking comfortable around themselves. This is a team which I reckon will be making changes no matter what going into next season, and that will be an interesting one. But looking forward here, where you've got RGM, which are looking closer and closer as a whole unit, I reckon RGM are the favorites going into this series here, Jay. They're just more together. And the only thing that could stop them is just Ixo and Breezy together having a day where they fucking pop off like you used to see in preseason. And that is a lot to ask at the moment.
See, that shocks me because I thought we'd disagree on this front, but actually, I can't fault your fucking arguments there. Like, genuinely, like seeing how We Dem Girls have played so far in the last couple of weeks, and the togetherness is still not formed by this point of the season. Yeah, I'd say RGM with the Justice Mike Boy combination, considering that they played together for so long. Rizex as well has proved himself to be great. They're not top RLRS contenders, but for We Dem Girls, like this seems like a team that they should lose to just based on the fact that the chemistry has not worked for them. And yeah, like as you say, win or lose, We Dem Girls have got to make a roster change because these three players should have been making it into the top end of the rival series. They should have been making it into, at the very least, top 3, but they're not. And I think that's because mostly down to that team play, it's not worked for them. It is really, really just, the chemistry just isn't there for this team. And while I want to say, hey, no, take it back to Formula started again, I do think there are some recoverable elements. I think that Ixo and Breezy are a great combination duo. And again, while I hate to single out Greasy because I think he's a great player, but I think that he's the element that might be causing the problems here in We Dem Girls. I mean, to go back to a point that you were making before in previous weeks about how Ixo and Breezy could have done with more like a daddy-like figure, I guess you could say. I think one of the guys that you mentioned obviously was like Tylacto, for example, how he always hangs back and lets Ixo and Breezy do their thing. It's like, is a player like that going to be the best fit for someone like We Dem Girls? Or like, what kind of player could we fit into this roster and who could we change out to try and, fix this team? So I genuinely believe it is one roster move away from being RLCS contenders.
And the thing is that the way I see this roster, if they do stay up changing, would probably be getting rid of Breezy, to be honest, if they stay up. If they don't stay up, they completely all split. That's the way it's going. But if they do stay up, I reckon it'll be Breezy out and another player to step on in. Maybe you see someone like a Lot come on in, and I reckon it would probably be a more old dog player. But it's just weird because at the moment, this is a team that is just so fundamentally flawed as a whole, because naturally it feels more like Breezy and Ixo don't want to leave each other. Greasy doesn't, but they know that Greasy has been probably the most consistent and stable player on this team throughout the entire season. So what do? And it is just, they can't lose one aspect because then the team crumbles, it feels like anyway. And they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. This is a team that is just fundamentally flawed on each level. If they do split, like they could get rid of Greasy, but then they're going to have to get someone in that is a very, very good, powerful player. I'm thinking someone like Scrub Killer. But why the fuck would Scrub go down to an RLRS team? He not going to happen. Yeah,
not to mention with no salary either, considering what you said before. I don't see someone like Scrub Killer stepping into the fold on this one. Again, they're going to have to pull from the bubble scene, I feel like, for We Dem Girls. And, I think that
who'd you fucking pull?
Well, I was going to suggest the idea of going back to Tylacto, but I'm not sure if they want to make that happen because of the history that they've had together. I don't know where else you go from here for We Dem Girls. Excuse me. It's going to be a tough little affair for these two players. Again, I think that Ixo and Breezy have that potential. They've tried over and over again. They've had so many great performances outside of the Rival Series system, and I think that they've got what they need to make at least top of Rival Series. Very least at top of Rival Series. But like seeing all the rest of this shit go down, like, with the team just not linking up from a chemistry point, like they've got to change that third element, I think. I hate to be that guy that's saying that Greasy's got to go again, considering the shit he's had to deal with complexity prior to this, but I think that's the best move. I think that's the best move, and bring in something that was a bit more defensively based for the We Dem Girls side, because unlike Savage, they've been unable to brute force their way through the Rival Series, and it shows. It really shows the fact that they've fighting for their tournament lives here in, their final match of the week, in their final match of the league. So.
But Jay, you look at that and go, all these 3 players, would you put them on an RLCS roster above anyone else? And I honestly say no to that. So there are RORS teams. There are RORS players, sorry. So them sticking around that sort of 4th to 6th mark, I think with how they played this season, that's right.
Again, together, I would say that they could be RLCS caliber. But together, I don't think that they will be able to make it, as an RLCS team. Again, I think that there's one move away from potentially going further up. And I think there's potential that they could contest for top 3, whether they go to
last week, I'm just going to say the only player I'd like to see them replace would be, like I said, probably one of them, we'll say. But I think Arju, with that more all-roundedness, could fill out that team. From any one player.
Considering what we've already seen so far in the last week of RLCS action, that's going to be a questionable sort of result. And I guess that is a great way to sort of segue out of the RLCS and just sort of give, RLRS, and give our predictions for the final week of the action, of the league play action. So Bacon, we've got Notorious Legion taking on Civet Geneva in our top match, our pointless match of the week, if you will, because at the end of the day, both teams' fates are secured. Who gives a fuck? Baguette Squad taking on RCD in the second match of the night. Obviously, there's that We Dem Girls versus RJM series and the very important Triple Trouble versus BDS series. So, highlight match, it's going to be We Dem Girls RJM. I don't even think there's a fucking contest about that. That one is just too much riding on it to even go about it. But the rest of them, obviously, I think Triple Trouble BDS is the one that matters the most other than that, because I think that's the one where the most upset potential could happen, and RCD will be banking on Triple Trouble completely taking control of that series. But top to bottom, predictions, let's go.
Notorious Legion taking it 3-1 or 3-0? 3-1, 3-0, 3-0. RCD Espanol taking that 3-0. RJM taking it 3-2, and that's more because I want it to be close. I could see We Dem Girls crumbling on that one, to be quite honest. But let's just say 3-2, just to be somewhat fair. And then BDS taking down Triple Trouble. I could go with a 3-0 once again, to be quite frank, but give them a little beacon of hope. Let's say 3-1.
I'm actually mostly the same, except we're going to go 3-0 Notorious Legion, 3-0 RCD Espanol, 3-2 to RJM. Not because that's what I want to see, but that's because what I expect to see based off of what We Dem Girls have in the in the talent brains. But exactly the same as I say with you, as you said, I could see them crumbling, and this could be a 3-0 series for RJM easily, and 3-1 to BDS as well. Like, actually, our predictions are pretty much on point.
I think the same, yeah.
Yeah, Triple Trouble. I mean, here's the thing: is like the biggest upset potential will be Triple Trouble, and if they do that, then fuck me, what a result that would be for RCD.
Yeah.
What else do you say other than that? That is the rival series done for our week 6. So we're going to move on and talk about our week 8 of the championship series. I mean, technically it's week 7 because it's a double header, but whatever. The final week of league play as well, which will secure our final standings going into those regional playoffs. And from top to bottom, your results are as follows: Singularity beating AS Monaco 3-0 as expected. Mouse Sports just edging it above Endpoint 3-2, and TSM edging their matchup above FCB of all people at 3-2. Reciprocity also putting an upset against the Dignitas side, 3-2 on that board. Mouse Sports getting 3-2 above FCB, and then Renault Vitality close out the night 3-2 up against Veloce. So your final standings are Renault Vitality and Dignitas in the top 2, 8-1 and 7-2 respectively, with the 3rd and 4th positions being taken by Reciprocity and Mouse Sports, both teams at 6-3 with +6 on the game difference, with I believe the tiebreaker being Rex victory above Mouse Sports in week 2, 3 possibly, earlier on in the season is the bottom line. Veloce and FC Barcelona are the last 2 teams to make it into the regional playoffs at 5th and 6th position, again both at 5-4 but +4 and +3 on game difference respectively. They actually both dropped pretty significantly. FC Barcelona, with those 2 losses this week, went from 3rd place to 6th place, so they've really ballsed it up.
Oh, and we'll be talking about that.
Oh yeah, we absolutely will. Singularity, however, are the team that will not be in for either set of playoffs, neither promotion or regionals. They're actually in 7th place with 4 to 5 on their board, remaining in their position. And in fact, the whole bottom 4 has remained in the same position. Endpoint, TSM, out in 8th and 9th, 2 in 7, -7, -11 on the game difference. And poor AS Monaco, unable to get a single series victory this season. They will be in the rival series for season 10. Now, before we get into the results specifically, there's a couple of things that you wanted to address about the broadcast, Bacon. So let's sort of like, I'll let you take the floor for a little bit.
So straight up, one thing that we brought up earlier is with everything moving online, with all eyes now to esports and Rocket League as one of them, this is where you've got to try and prove it as being, I'm trying to think, as professional as, top class. You got to prove its worth. And there's been so many little things where there's so many inconsistencies with the broadcast, with how everything is treated. One of them just straight up being dress code. Now, whenever you're doing any tournament, like Jay, I know we're at a lower level, but whenever we do anything, straight up dress code is one of the first things that actually gets mentioned because it's part of the image of like the product, which let's just say Belong Arena Clash when we come into the season. Previously, we were told, like when it was done in the, as if it was almost like from one of the arenas, we were told, no, you just wear t-shirt, jeans, you keep it looking like that because it's more as if you're rocking up to one of the arenas. Move into studios, no, now you're wearing shirts, not ties because we're not being properly professional, but shirts. It's a bit like, when they're
that doesn't sound good when you say it. We're not being proper professionals here. We're just being,
it's like
we're just pretenders.
You take it that step up. It's smart casual.
Yeah, in terms of dress, yeah.
Yes. And that was even there before, when they're in the studio, everyone was shirt and ties and blazers. Now, we looked at that and went, okay, that's maybe a little bit too much. When you're there on LAN, fuck yeah. But when you're just in the studio, maybe tone it down, work casual a little bit. But now we've moved to these online broadcasts and it is just all over the fucking place. Like the biggest showing, like for me there is like, there's no consistency. Like when you look at Chiefs, where he's fucking decked out to the nines, like looking proper good in like his waistcoat, suit, and like shirt and tie on, and then you've got let's say Gibbs in his dad shirt, short sleeve, checkered. Johnny Boy playing, using one of his plaid shirts, whatever. Shogun, black t-shirt with a blazer on. Leaf was rocking this weekend like a dark gray, almost black shirt, and then you've got Turtle in a pretty nice just jumper, like a pullover, and Wave Punk in a hoodie looking like he had just rocked out of bed. There is an inconsistency everywhere, which when you're trying to project the top end of Rocket League, that sort of shit is just so easy down pat to the point of like on the RORS B stream, just before each week, we just all go near enough. Oh, okay. Yep. Shirts once again. What color is everyone wearing? Just to make sure that no one's like wearing the same color. It's as simple as that, and these guys can't do that. Is that a fault on the casters or the production company running it? Like you just got to be there going, this is simple shit that everyone works out. I mean, it can't be done here.
At the same time, though, you also got a question: is like how how much of a priority is the dress code on the remote stream broadcast? I won't lie, I think that it's a very sort of
it's a little nitpicky, yes.
Yeah, it's a little bit nitpicky, and it's like it's not a main priority for me personally. I mean, I don't care how they dress. I don't even think casters should appear on camera.
When we're told on the B stream that we have to say Rocket League Rival Series instead of RLRS, why is this not nitpicky?
I was coming to that. It's like obviously, but Psyonix have set a particularly different precedent with the way that they've gone things over, because that is actually a thing, right? Where there are certain restrictions that we are imposed in terms of what we can say and can't say on a Rival Series B stream. We can't call it the RLRS. It has to be the Rival Series, not even the Rocket League Rival Series, just the Rival Series. They're that specific, and there's certain things we can't say. Like it's got to be like squeaky clean PG. Like there was like a 420 Blaze It joke that was made last season, and Psyonix took note of that. They were like, no Blaze It jokes.
That one's fine.
But that's the thing. It's like I understand some of these rules, but it's like when you're going to put those in place, I would have thought that the same attention to detail would come in for the championship series. Yeah. I just feel like possibly it was a bit more of a shock to the system because obviously, having a suit in a bedroom doesn't look as, fancy or it sticks out too much, I think, is the main concern for someone like for a team like the RLCS, which is why you see like guys like Shogun, for example, he's wearing like a blazer with a t-shirt underneath, which clashes a little bit, but I understand why, because he wants to represent that sort of professionality without going overboard with it, I feel like. And again, as you say, the inconsistency is the main thing that sort of catches people off from a visual standpoint. I think someone needs to sit back and say, look, this is how we're going to do this. And it doesn't have to be suits, it doesn't have to be like, dressing up and looking fancy. Like what I do all the time is I actually, I don like an overshirt onto my broadcast. So that way I don't look like a complete wreck, but I don't also look like I'm overdoing it.
A minor wreck.
Fuck you. But
that's
I don't look like
the t-shirts you wear underneath though. Like plain t-shirts is the way that should go.
Yeah, but no plain t-shirts exist. Like you should know, if you ever shop t-shirts like I do, like you should know this by this point. There's no such thing as a clear t-shirt. You might have a clear black t-shirt, of which I have like one.
I'm wearing a clear, like, I don't know, reddish wine t-shirt right now. All my t-shirts are clear, purely for this factor.
Right, look, man. Do I look like the guy who shops plain? Right, I'm the guy who shops the Data Remember t-shirts and buys any Shikari merch. Okay, that's what most of my fucking wardrobe looks
merch,
like. Yes, I live off merch. That's the bottom line of it. Anyway, but back to the point at hand. Like, I feel like some basic sort of like, hey, just wear something, semi-smart. Nothing too over the top. Don't go like work, office workplace thing, but don't go, complete tracksuit and shit like that. Even though I think there would have been some casters that would have appreciated that, but I digress.
Even then, tracksuits don't matter. Like I'm saying, tracksuit trousers, go the fuck ahead. You're on camera. It don't
absolutely
matter. Like I think I can remember I've turned up to things before, like just where I'm not feeling well and just be more comfortable in like joggers. But that top half, you just make sure that you've got a nicely folded shirt in your bag and you go change in the bathroom. It's that sort of case. Like that happens everywhere. And even then working at home right now, you stay in shorts, not the whole, meme of boxer shorts and, in your pants or whatever. You've got to have something on there. But it's that point of what's on camera has to be professional. And what we've seen from this past, week, and even then the week before, it's not up to that standard.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a very nitpicky thing in my opinion, but I do recognize the reason why we need to kind of like up things in terms of the online broadcast, because like we with the potential for more eyes to be on the product with nothing going on in the sports world, like one of the first ports of calls when it comes to the casual sports fan, if they want to catch some competition, would be esports, and one of the first ports of call for the esports would be fucking Rocket League. So.
Yep.
I think giving a good first impression, again, doesn't have to be suits, doesn't have to be anything fancy, but I think it would be appropriate to do something like that. The one thing, however, that you did raise and you have on the show plan that I did kind of want to talk about is actually the MVP awards, particularly the week-to-week MVP awards. And you did not appreciate what happened on both the EU and NA broadcast this past week. Tell me, or past 2 weeks, I should say. Yeah. Tell me why. Tell me what happened and tell me why you don't like it.
So for me right now, yes, I know the weekly MVPs are a little bit of a token award. They're just more as a shout out to the best player of that week. But the way that it's gone over the last 2 weeks has sort of been a bit jarring, not really up to standard, because you look at the last 2 weeks, previous, like week 7 for NA, it was Fireburner. Fireburner came in for one game. Now, he did play decent. He did play quite well. But when he's coming in for one game comparing to, other players that have had to play a whole like week's worth, 2 games over that day, it just feels a little bit disjointed. And it feels like it's being taken as a meme. We take a look to this week in Arju. Now, Arju played well. Like, that lad stepped into RLCS, yes. But was he the best player of the week? No. Speed actually outshone in every area on that team. And that's just me saying from Mouse, not looking to other teams at all there. So why it just feels like it's a token gift given, like, oh, this guy's subbing on in. Without him, they couldn't have played this week. Well, that's the fucking job of a sub. And I know, again, this is another nitpicky problem with it, but it just feels like you're using it as a joke when it needs to be taken seriously.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, it doesn't help when the rest of the scene are seeing these MVP awards given out and they're looking at the RLCS analysts and they're saying, hey, these guys are the top end. These guys are the top end sort of like, guys at their job. And they're given these MVP awards, which are given an artificial sort of inflation of value as an award. And they're giving those out to the subs. And then I see stuff on the subreddit going up like, oh, are subs the new meta? What? Have you been on Magic Hill or something like that? Have you gone picking magic mushrooms from Magic Hill and just started going, oh
chasing
you're chasing dragons and chasing no. The reason why these subs are the only reason why I could say a sub would be an advantage is when you have to is because it's such a different sort of like change up in the roster that it creates unpredictability around a team. That's the only thing I can think about. And I think Arju did a lot of that over the course of his time with Mousesports. We'll get into that in a little bit, in a little bit more detail in a moment's time. But it's like, but again, as you say, MVP, compared to the rest of the week, I think there were some more better players that did that. I think that Fruity may have deserved a bit of an MVP award, potentially even Farah in that respect. As you say, Speed on that Mousesports camp did really, really well. I think that there are better players to pick for those awards.
Yes.
And as you say, I feel like they're just trying to do this to artificially create a story that, oh, Firebird is back. He did a good job. He helped them to victory. Oh, Arju's come in. He's a brand new guy. He's helped them to victory in a time of need. And it's like, yeah, but that's not the reality of things, is it? Like it's very different in real life. It's very different in the way that you like take a look at it from an analytical perspective, and you look at these and you think, maybe it's not quite the same sort of way, with the same sort of way that we take a look at our results from TEI, for example. Like there's no wider context to this. It's just like one zoned in storyline. Everyone's just focusing on that. And when it turns out they give that MVP award because it's, as you say, a token award. And that doesn't help anything, I think.
Yeah, and it just comes down to the point of the MVP of the day is not being taken seriously by anyone accountable, and it's not even like really bothered about. You can notice this straight up by like, they have that board back in the studio, and I can remember one of them was, I wouldn't say it was something like Freaky got it, and it was just straight on under, just he played well. That was the only accountable, like, why he could be MVP of that day. And he's just to the point of just fuck weekly MVPs right now. Just instead of doing that, have a recap session at the end of the day and like the biggest story coming out of that day of RLCS. That is much better because that, like you said, plays to the story aspect of it, which I'm all well down to. Of course, keep the end of season MVP. That's quite crucial and actually done quite well, apart from last season. But we talked about that to death now. But it's just that case of get rid of fucking daily, weekly MVPs, because no one's actually taking it seriously on the team. So why try and transfer it on over? Keep, like I said, the story of the day aspect,
Either that or legitimately find an actual MVP and give reasons as to why he was that MVP, and have a discussion about it. Potentially even do like a nomination thing where like you have all the analysts submit their own sort of nominations, and then we have various or we take those nominations. Like I know that they have the little board of like players of the day and shit, and it's like rather than force it down the throat to give sort of like a good story, have analysts give like good arguments, but at the end show at the post show, and like say, oh hey, we all vote that this is going to be our thing, and not just have it at the desk, have it all the casters and all the analysts, because I think that will probably give a much better representation. Either that or just find an independent analyst who would probably look at the games outside of that and then just decide something like that, and have it based on statistics and subjective gameplay, rather than just, oh, this is the best thing for the sake of the broadcast. I feel like that's very disingenuous to the rest of the scene. But speaking of MVPs, obviously it was the end of season MVP. It was the end of season, so we have some end of season MVPs to be given out. The regular season MVP will be decided after next week, after the playoffs have gone by. I can't wait to see what we see about that one, because like after last season, I really hope they think about their position a bit better. But we do have our Golden Striker, Clutch Playmaker, and Savior of the Season awards being given out to Fairy Peak for Golden Striker, Alpha 55 4 for Clutch Playmaker and Scrub Killer for Savior of the Season. I'm kind of surprised, actually. Actually, no. I thought that it would be swapped around at the beginning of the season between Clutch Playmaker and Golden Striker because I thought that Alpha would be set up to do some damage, but it seems like his settlement into Reno Vitality has just more enabled Fairy Peak and K-Dop to do some damage, more specifically Fairy Peak to do some damage. I think that's a bit of an underutilization of his, like, skills and his talent as a player. You don't think so, really?
No. So the way that Vitality largely are played right now is Fairy Peak is end-to-end. So he is their chief defender as well as their chief striker. Very similar to, how Cooksir plays over on Mouse, but just Vitality are a lot more aggressive and have been getting out more goals this season naturally. K-Dop is always leaning about more downfield, so he's more attack and midfield. And then you've got Alpha, who's more midfield and defense. And they all cover that role, so there's always two men doing a single job, but then that means they've got someone to back up if someone's out of place or moving elsewhere. It's just how Vitality are currently playing strategically, and it works very well for them. And where they're naturally the best team in the world and getting the most goals, they're going to be, linking up on that area. Striker and Playmaker generally, as the awards go to the best teams because the best teams are always scoring the most goals. And then when you look over to, say, Savior of the Season, that generally goes to the weaker teams because the weaker teams are receiving shots more often,
I can see that. I just think that considering what Alpha did with, Savage, FC Barcelona, and then TSM, I feel like that there was a missed opportunity to enable him a bit more. I mean, at the end of the day, it's working for Reno Vitality.
He was needed in an attacking role for those teams, or back on Barca, everyone was just attacking. That was it, And even then, he was more of a core player, more of that defender. When it comes over to the Vitality, where you've got Fairy Peak and K-Dop who are trying to strike, he's just got to fill the roles as a bit more of a middle back man. He's not needed in attack as much.
All right. Well, I mean, again, I still think it's a bit more of an underutilization of him, but it's working for Reno Vitality. So at the end of the day, fucking A right to them. They get that Clutch Playmaker and Golden Striker awards rightfully. The Savior of the Season, though, rightfully goes to Scrub Killer. Again, he has been one of the best defensive elements I think we've ever seen in RLCS. He was certainly one of the parts that bolstered Mouse Sports, I think, at least in terms of what they were able to do with the... what's it called? With the way that they played out the season. I think that Scrub, all in all, if you fit him into any sort of team with an offensive play style, he'll be able to make them better just by being able to rotate and block off whatever is needed from the back line, essentially. His track record as well in defense has been nothing but stellar, man. And losing him on Mouse Sports will certainly be a blow to that camp.
So I'm intrigued by that because I think, yes, he did do a good job in defense, but he wasn't really bolstering anything in attack. And Mouse Sports were really dysfunctional this season. They couldn't figure out how to play with each other. So again, they were getting shot on quite a lot, like I said. So that's why they got the Savior of the Season. And Scrub was fantastic, like you said, in defense. But as a whole unit, they didn't work, and hence why they didn't get they weren't on track to get a fantastic finish. This last week really saved their bacon, and
Save their digital bacon.
No. But yeah, this last week again, they did go up against two weaker teams. We have to say that, but. Yeah, with Scrub gone, I'm expecting this team to look for a move that's going to make them stronger, because you looked at this week anyway, Jay, and just how Speed was able to pop off once again. Is that that's got to be a direct correlation to Scrub not being there. And so Scrub, yes, did work on defense, but clearly there was a there were cross wires, when it came around to getting into attack. As I put before, back against Reciprocity, when they were just looking the whole defense and the whole, statement of no, we defend, where you guys have to go into attack at some point. Nah, we don't know how to attack. And that was largely down to the team not being able to figure it out.
Well, I mean, speaking on the topic of Mouse Sports, obviously, we can kind of transition away from the season MVPs and talk a bit more about this team. Obviously, they were playing with substitute Arju in their series this week. Now, I have to say, I had no expectations from Mousesports going into this one, because like when you have such a sudden change in the middle of a season with no time to prepare, you never really know how it's going to work. You never know how it's going to affect things going into, you never know how it's going to affect things going into a match, especially when Mousesports had a doubleheader week with two very important series to take. I expected them to lose them flat out. You know, I was ready for Mousesports to lose in 3-1, 3-0 fashions, but no, they took the series as bacon. They actually had a really good showing. I think against Endpoint really showed off exactly what they could do. I don't think they're as good as they were with someone like Scrub Killer, but I think that they held their own relatively okay. There were some mistakes being made from the FC Barcelona camp. I want to talk about them separately after we talk about Mousesports in general, because, you know, there are some very tragic fucking moments there. But, you know, just isolating Mousesports away from the FCB result, I think that all in all, that team play, to just get the wins on the board and just to keep control, I think they did okay.
So for me, when Mouse go back to basic Rocket League and they can still pull out the wins, that shows individual skill on this team, which of course everyone knew this team fucking had. There's no, disproving that at all. But it just shows that Mouse, when they were looking so shaky, don't get me wrong, they were still getting wins with Scrub, but there was clear miscommunication between the team, different ideologies of how to play Rocket League. So going back to basics, the team knew that because they only had one fucking week to try and fit themselves together, or a little bit of time to play Avaji and get him set on up, and they were just playing some very basic Rocket League. They looked decent on pitch. I'm not going to say they looked like a team that came out fourth. Don't get me wrong, they look like a more mid-table team, but this is whilst playing with a sub, and that's what you have to take into account. Yes, they were going up against Endpoint, one of the weaker teams, and yes, FCB was playing weak, like an absolute wank on that week, but Mouse looked decent, and going forward, I mean, it's regionals coming up. They can only improve. So let's just see what damage they can do, because Mouse and me are the ones where you've got no expectations, of course, for them because they're still playing with a sub. But what can they do? They're just there purely to surprise everyone, and I'm looking forward to that. And I'm mostly looking forward to Archie, because you got to think this is his first step up into top-end Rocket League, where he's not done, RLRS before, and he's being thrown straight on into the deep end, especially with fucking regionals, and when regionals are the heaviest they're ever going to be. And right now, this is just bolstering his stock. A lot of teams, a lot of players are going to be looking at him. Like I said, I could expect one of the RLRS teams that stay up next season maybe to look to this lad and just bring him straight on in. Who knows? Maybe if he does well enough this current season that one of the lower end RLCS teams might like him. I doubt that, but the RLRS straight in route, I reckon, is going to be so strong next season. Does he stay with Mouse going forward? That's a possibility, and it all comes down to how they played this weekend.
I think that if they do play well this weekend, if they make so much as, if they beat Reciprocity, then I think the Mousesports will want to stick with Arju. Like, I think that would be the result where it's like, okay, that's potential right there. That is potential in this team, and potentially a decent move that gives them the way in to try and rebolster themselves. I don't think it's a likely result, but I think that if they can pull that upset, then that shows to me that Mousesports will have quite a little bit, because even the Reciprocity are at a slump, and I don't think they're quite at that same sort of position. And again, we'll talk more in detail about this in a moment. I think that they actually have had a good couple of weeks, especially in that Dignitas series from later on during the night. I wanted to zone in specifically on Arju though. Do we think that he has the talent? Do we think he has the spark? Do we think he has the magic around him to be an RLCS talent? You think so?
He's always been the same as when we look at, say, EXA. I know I was questioning it earlier, but again, that's because of what we've seen this season. He's always been there. Could he step up to RLCS? I think yes, but it comes down to the team, because naturally when you come into a more secure team like how Astral did into Dignitas, it's a lot easier to fit on in and be a bit safer with that decision. RG coming up has really proved himself, what with the 2 wins this week. It just comes down to, has he proved himself enough to get a spot on that team? That's the real question, or get a spot on another team to pull on through. And there's a lot of different things going on right now. When you look to Intel World Open, Well then, Arju, being an Italian player alongside Cooks here, you got to think, would there be a reason for Mouse to try and push to get a new sub on in that is Italian as well, so that Mouse Sports then has an Italian roster? Like, a lot of these do play on in to the fourth set to it.
I think that honestly, that for Inter World Open specifically, they might end up going with that and leave Speed to his own sort of like, you know, English and UK team, which to me feels like the most likely thing because that's what Mouse Sports could profited the most from.
I reckon Mouse were looking to do that with Speed and Scrub previously.
Yeah, well now Scrub's gone, so fuck out of here. You know, they've got to rethink their plan. And honestly, again, as you say, Italian, there it is. That's a great opportunity right there. But for Mouse Sports going into the rest of the main scene, I would say that Arju getting picked up, it will be tested in their upper quarter final, and that's the main thing that I want to keep an eye on going into our promotion playoffs. We'll break that down in more detail at the end of the show. For now, though, I want to move on and talk about some of the lesser impressive moments in the course of their. In the course of the final week. In particular, TSM managed an upset above FC Barcelona. How the fuck did this become a thing? Now, I won't lie. When I wrote the show, when I wrote up the show plan, I was yet to catch up on all the RLCS results. Actually, that was Mother's Day. I spent a lot of time with my mum. We watched The Witcher. Not a good plan. I'll tell you that right now. Do not watch The Witcher with your mother in the room. It's a very, very bad idea.
I did that. I was absolutely fine. I guess different families, dude.
Yeah, no. Anyways, but no, spend that time together. I got the chance to catch up in the next couple of days with the RLCS results. But I wrote the show before I seen the TSM FCB matchup. And when I did my VOD review and when I did my my VOD review and my demo review on this match. Holy shit, FC Barcelona, they've looked atrocious this week. Terrible. Back into old habits. Again. 3 weeks ago. Not even that. 2 weeks ago or so. We were saying this team was... Actually, no, yeah, it was 3 weeks ago. I remember going on the show with Jam and talking to you about it as well. Like, we said FC Barcelona, they finally found it. They finally found that team play, that three-man unit that now they have Devo doing great defensive and Ronicky and Flakes doing amazing stuff in the offense. And now it looks good. Now it looks exciting. And then this week comes and none of that came to fruition. None of it was there. It went back to solo standard, brute force approach that FC Barcelona have been known for and known to fail at an RLCS level. It's all crumbled to pieces on the last week as well. They dropped from 3rd to 6th. Why?
The problem is as well, though, Jay, that they showed this the previous week up against AS Monaco. The difference just being that you thought they weren't bothering because it was AS Monaco. Like, they came on in and went, yeah, we can sort of play a solo standard style. We don't really have to care about it. But no, the signs were there and they fell on through into this week as well. And, well, I'm just going to quickly bring up... European Invitational because it felt like it was there as well. This is a team that is dysfunctional, and I can tell you now there is going to be changes moving on into next season. And personally, I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, Flakes was a one-season wonder for this team because it feels like, yeah, even yeah, purely because I reckon this team needs something else in there, and they're just looking at each other, and there's no trust between each other. There's no passing going on with each other, and they need a serious shake-up. Now, what else could probably fix this? Maybe a coach, but I look at those players, and I think none of them are going to listen to a coach because they're all egotistical assholes. So it's got to be a player swap because they're all going to look at it and go, it's his fault, not mine. They're all in the wrong, and it is fucking atrocious of this team.
No, I mean, I agree. I can absolutely understand that. Where you come with that, coming with that point. But honestly, I genuinely thought that Devo should be the one on the chopping block because I saw his performance in this one, and he looked the worst of them all three. He genuinely looked the worst of all three in this one. I think that he fucked up so many touches, so many positions. Like I look at this whole thing and I think that of the defensive elements and of the offensive elements, like Devo was the worst one. And considering that he was the guy that I thought that he was, no, here's the thing. It's like, I understand where you're coming from with the whole idea of Flakes being, like a one-hit wonder. But genuinely, I think he's been the most consistent element of this whole team. Devo has been up and down all season. And there were times where he looked amazing. Again, there was that one game he had 13 saves in. That was legit. This, however, just go back and watch and count how many times he fucked up touches, dribbles, pressure plays, and defensives, most importantly as well, for FC Barcelona. I genuinely think he was the real problem child, and he tried his best to recover it by getting dominant in the offensive half, but he couldn't finish it. He couldn't finish it whatsoever, and I think that really messed up the team formation.
So I'm going to say, yes, there were way too many mistakes against Mouse, but going into TSM, Devo was their best player against TSM. And it's all because Devo's trying to play a more traditional style. He's actually trying to be a teammate, but where his two teammates aren't, he's just completely caught off guard every single fucking time and just having to go on pure reactions because he's there like, okay, that's going to hit over here. Oh, shit. Okay, I've got to get back in defense. Don't worry, my teammate's going to be, no, he's not. Shit, I've got to run to that. And he is just completely being left out, like hung out to dry on this. And he looks the worst purely because the other two are leaving him in super shitty scenarios. Devo is having to be the fall guy for this team in this week's matches. And realistically, he, like, without him on the pitch, if it was just, another solo standard player, another just strong, aggressive player, this team probably, another guy that was just going straight headfirst into it, this team could have easily been taken down like 3-1, 3-0 by both sides.
I don't know. I feel like that if that's the case, then doesn't that suggest that there's more of a chemistry issue between, Flakes and Ronicky versus Devo in that respect?
Exactly. That's why I said I reckon Flakes is straight out the door again.
I don't think so. I think that him and Ronicky are gonna look to kick Devo. I mean, obviously, I've got no information to back that up, but based on my own analytical perspective, I think that team could do better with Flakes and Ronicky sticking together. I think that that's what I think. I think that Devo had a lot of major issues. It's not just about positioning and angles. I think he also lost control too much. And I think
Flakes
that it's a result.
Is continuously having a go, or it seems anyway, like he's having a problem with Ronicky's style of defense to throw it away. And there's just so many different personality issues within his team, so many different thoughts about Rocket League that they do not mesh together well. It's a good idea on paper, like a like for Bluey, realistically, with Flakes. But there are so many problems with this team that I think it is going to be a first in, first out sort of scenario. If it's not, then it's Ronicky. I think, and if they do decide to get rid of Devo, that is the worst mistake this team can make.
I don't think so. I think we're going to have to agree to disagree on this front because I think we're taking two very different philosophies on Rocket League. And at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do when you have two different styles into this whole thing. But we'll have to see how the cards work out for FCB. I think another roster move may be on the cards. Who that will be, what they think. Do they agree with me? Do they agree with you? Do they have a completely different idea together? I mean, there's also the possibility that they stay together for the next season because obviously they will have another RLCS under their belts. But the thing about it is that we've seen potential from FC Barcelona. Again, take a look at week 4, 5, week 4 in the doubleheader 5 and 6. They played out of their minds in those matches. They played absolutely stellarly, even with losses against Dignitas and close series against Singularity. Their play style, with the way that they had their team formation, was stellar. Utterly stellar. And the main reason why I'm upset is because I saw finally this big project of just big strikers, big personalities, finally after a year and a half, 2 years nearly of of work, finally come together and finally be something that could contend with top level RLCS, and it's all just gone straight out the fucking window. And it's annoying more than anything else because I'm sitting here with the broken pieces of this team, questioning why. And how do we put it back together? And I don't think you do put it back together, Bacon.
I said, you get a transfer out and bring Nolly in. That's where I see Nolly ending up in the end. Yep.
Well, Nolly could well be on the transfer list for Singularity going into the off-season, but again, all those details are to come up later on down the road. We'll bring you all that information here on Aftershock and SSP2 in the off-season time. For now, though, we're going to move on, talk about one final team. I did want to zone in on the Reciprocity upset against Dignitas because I did not see this coming, but looking back at the VODs, again, I can see exactly why they managed to do this. Now, Reciprocity, we've been drilling it into everyone's heads that obviously this is a team that are on the down and down. They're they're in a slump position. They're not as good as their Valencia's positions, in their Valencia sort of form. Mm-hmm. But I have to say that the way that they held their discipline and pressure against Dignitas actually really impressed me in this series.
So the largest reason behind this was, again, I'm going to say Ferrer was an old school popping off like he did, where like he still was playing good. He was their best striker, but it comes, sorry, not Ferrer, Chaucet. But it comes down to Chaucet's, like they've changed up their game plan so that instead of that traditional movement of, Chaucet falls back, Fruity becomes the main striker. No, they've changed that. They've gone for a plan C, a new idea of Chaucet still stays the main striker, but the whole team sort of like just becomes a little bit, I don't want to say slower as such, but a little bit more methodical. And they're trying to use their heads from just a simple, you move your pieces around idea. And you look at this realistically, Dignitas were the best team for this series, but Reciprocity had the best game plan, if that makes sense to you, Jay.
Yes.
And
yes.
Reciprocity have now got an answer to a day when they are not playing that great. And for me, that is exciting going forward for this team because, naturally we were worried about, okay, there could be a transfer or something going on here because this team has never worked. And they finally got an answer to when they're not working, what to do. And that, for me, like I said, where they just sort of like, okay, we've now got to really talk to each other, which they were doing already beforehand, but they're covering each other. They're recovering a lot better. So even though they're not getting, fantastic, I'm going to say like shots off, great goals and all of that sort of biz going on. Like you take that last series, the last game, sorry, as an example, and it was a 1-0, and you just look at, they're just locking things down, and that is exciting going forward. It might not be the most fun way to play, whatever, but it gets the fucking job done.
Yeah, and I think that it's not a permanent fix. It won't get them back to that Valencia win position, but I do think that it is a solution for now. I think they'll have to do a bit of development going forward. And I think that they forced some very awkward positions from Dignitas as a result of that. And I kind of want to actually zone in on those guys as well, because while I do think Reciprocity had a great game plan and a great idea, Dignitas went very brute force in this matchup, and it shows. I think that their defensive was actually pretty poor. Just going back through the VODs, I can't help but notice the number of times that Astral was left alone as the sole defender, as Yukio and Valiant Panda were nowhere to be seen in the back line. Like at all. They were trying to do something else completely. I don't know what they were trying to set up at the midfield or in the defensive line, but Astral was often left to be the sole defender on a very awkward attack angle from Reciprocity, which is credit to Reciprocity for generating those positions. But they constantly had no answer and no adjustment on the Dignitas side. And it does concern me because it looks a lot like how they did in TEI, Bacon. And while that does obviously come into question with what I was saying about that particular tournament, I feel like Dignitas are getting into some bad habits in terms of thinking, this doesn't matter. Because while I do think that, yes, obviously they want to put their best foot forward in the RLCS, at the same time, I think by this point they were secured for top 2. So I don't think their effort game was in it entirely for this matchup.
So the problem seems to be natural rotations of the team of Dignitas, where they're ending up. So Astral in defense, straight away for me anyway, Jay, is red flags. This lad should never be last man back, He should be the one that you're expecting solo plays to come out for. He's your first line of attack. He is that prod. Generally as well, it's even to the point of he becomes the third man into rotation. And it feels like it's coming down to Panda wanting to get involved in the attack a little bit more, when that's a big no to me. If Panda's getting involved into the attack, he's finishing off a play. Like after all that siege, mentality we come out with, where you're just peppering that backboard, peppering the net, shot after shot, and Panda comes in with a goal. That is how Panda should be getting goals, because he needs to be directing his teammate from the midfield and near enough keeping everyone in line. So where he's coming up into attack a little bit too deep, he's trying to be a bit more of a striker role. That communication seems to break down, and that's why the team is looking weak. Yukio, I would say, is doing fine, but again, it comes down to that weak link of just natural rotations of Panda and Astra are in the wrong places.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I feel that the positioning was really whiffed on this one. And again, it is very dissimilar to the idea of Dignitas not caring about this series because they already secured their position in top 2, which does deflate Reciprocity's position as well. And considering what they brought to the table, I hate to say that because I think that they genuinely look good. Going up against Mousesports, though, obviously, is still going to be a completely different challenge for Reciprocity. And whether Dignitas will be able to do the same thing, or whether they'll be able to have the same, or whether they will have the same problems in their semi-final position is yet to be seen. But concerning times for Dignitas camp. Anyways, is there anything else you want to talk about before we move on to our playoff preview, Bacon?
I guess we can talk about just how close that sort of top end of the board is, like how there's different tiers, to plays at the moment. So you've got Renault Vitality, clearly the best team, I would argue, in the world right now. And that's purely just because NRG have dropped off a little bit. But unfortunately, we're not going to be able to see. We're never going to get a comparison
point. What I nominate is that we take
to Europe.
I nominate we take the top teams that would have made it to Championship Series, invite them to a LAN as soon as this coronavirus shit is over, and play it, and just do it. Just do it. Let's fucking have it, boys. Anyway, continue.
But yes, going forward, you can see Vitality there. Dig, like you said, are in a little bit of a troublesome week, so you take that into account, but definitely they're the clear top 2. Reciprocity with the bounce back, put them alongside Mouse, and Mouse, I think, are pretty undeserved at 4th. Veloce really taken apart, or we thought this was going to be the season from hell from them, that they'd drop off, like we said about them walking it, but no, consistency is king, and Veloce are the most consistent team there fucking is at the moment in Rocket League, so they've well earned that 5th spot. And Barcelona, purely after having such a great start to the season, like you said, getting that team play together, they go back to old mentalities and really drop off, and they're their own worst enemies, because realistically, if we were talking about Barcelona from let's say week 5, week 6, they would be about 3rd, 4th right now, but not to be. And well, let's say Singularity, they showed themselves this season, and they truly earned that sort of 7th spot, and that leaves us with Endpoint, Solo Mid, and ASM, where it just, definitely for ASM and Endpoint, they did not link up this season for them. And TSM, by lucky wins, I'm going to say, against an FCB that didn't show up, against ASM, and that just, that was not a good series at all.
No.
It just... TSM continue plugging along, and once again, don't get me wrong, they're in the promotion relegation tournaments, but from a little bit of inconsistency over the RLRS that we've seen over the last week, who knows, they could just get another season where they stay up. It really comes down to that promotion relegation tournament, which I think is going to be it's either going to be really interesting or a walk for the RLRS teams.
I think it could be interesting for Endpoint. TSM is my main concern in that one, but we'll talk about all that information and where that promotion tournament rests when it comes to it. I believe it's in 2 weeks' time.
Yep, should be, if I am by all previous schedules.
Let's have a look. 12th of April. So yeah, in 2 weeks' time is where we'll see, on Sunday the 12th of April, is where we'll see where the Rival Series promotion playoffs will rest. But that is all a thing to talk about for that particular week. For now, though, we're going to quickly preview our final standings for the playoffs. Because we have Dignitas and Renault Vitality in those semi-final positions. Dignitas will take on the winner of Reciprocity and Mousesports. Renault Vitality will take on the winner of the loser of that match, and the winner of FC Barcelona versus Veloce Esports. Bacon, fantasy bracket, go.
So, of course, Let's start from top, of course, so that we can lay up the teams for down below. Mouse Sports versus Reciprocity. With how Reciprocity have fixed themselves against Dig, I reckon it is going to be Reciprocity going on through. Dig will fix themselves because they're good enough a team to do that, and Dig take down Reciprocity. That then drops us to the other side of the bracket. Veloce versus Barcelona. Now, I would love to say the same thing that I did for Dig for Barcelona, but I don't think Barcelona are fixing themselves this week. So Veloce go on through. Veloce then go up against Mouse Sports. And I think with currently what's going on right now, I think Veloce take down Mouse Sports. It hurts me as a Mouse Sports fan, but like I said, no expectations from Mouse Sports here. So Veloce go on through. They go up against Vitality, and Vitality smack them. Vitality go on up against Dignitas, and they take down Dig.
Did you forget Bruce Buffer right there? They take them down.
Yeah. Oh. Vitality gonna smack some cheeks about. Lay down the law.
But no, yeah, I'm basically have the exact same bracket actually. I think that goes about as well as it does. You know, Reciprocity to going up against Mouse Sports, beat them. Dignitas will beat them to go to those finals. Veloce will go all the way up. Will go through those lower to Vitality and then take them on. I think that last grand final series, though, will be close.
Oh, that's going to be so fun. It always is. And it's always... Vitality is the one team Dig can't take down. So if they change that there, oh, baby, it's so good.
And remember as well, they came like 3-2 in that series. So it was down to the wire there. It will be down to the wire here. I'm going Vitality just based off the talents in that roster and how they've been able to hold themselves over the series. Obviously, as you would know, that is going to be our match to watch if that one does come to fruition. But yeah, that is basically going to wrap it up here for the regular season and wrap it up here for RL Aftershock. The end of the season is closing in. We are drawing in on some uncertain dark times in the Rocket League space, I want to say here, Bacon. But of course, we're going to be that guiding light for you all here on RL Aftershock. Bacon, it's been a hell of an episode, actually. We've got through quite a lot, and we've had quite some, I want to say, yeah, good discussions. Good discussions.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say right now, if we're the guiding light, we're all fucked.
And that is the best way to end off the show. I'll do the plugs as usual. Of course, follow us on Twitter at RL Aftershock for all the news and updates coming forward, along with the soon-to-be launch of SSP2. That most certainly will be a guiding light for us too, Bacon, at the very least, because that is coming very, very soon. We are on the final few steps to finally making it happen. As well as that, of course, you can join the Discord, ! No, we're not live, Jay. Shut the fuck up. The show notes, video descriptions, every single episode of the podcast. You can follow that Discord link and join us in our community. You can have a genuine, educated discussion in the same sort of way you can't have on the Reddit, where we accept most all voices. Because, of course, I'm assuming you're not a complete twat. But as well as that, you can find the podcast, as you always do, on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, and most other platforms of audio and video distribution. You can go to anchor.fm/RLAftershock to find your favorite platform or request your favorite way to listen. Bacon, I know you've already ended off with that we're fucked beer, but any final words that you want to say before we end off and look forward to the final stance of the RLCS?
No, just that next week is going to be pretty spicy. And like we said, I'm going to be back in Mouse Sports. I know no expectations for those lads, but a fanboy's got a fanboy, as Sam Rock would know.
I love you, Bacon. We'll see you back here next week on the same place, same time for even more of the Aftershock.